It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are here. They're both home, weirdly enough. Of course, Richard's got a great recommendation from his visit to Romania. Paul's got a game. He likes a lot of browser, too. We'll talk about the Microsoft earnings report. It was, in short, a very good quarter. It's going to be a very great show. Stay here. Windows Weekly is next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 879, recorded Wednesday, May 1st, 2024. The cockroach of CPUs. It's time for Windows Weekly! Yee-hee! Woohoo! Ha-ha! The show where we talk about
you
Windows.
just sit on a pin? What happened?
Ooh, that's Paul Thurrott.
Hey there.
Ooh, hey-yo. Lower McCungy's favorite son, little Paul Thurrott. Little Paulie Thurrott. Hey, Paul. How you doing? Thurrott.com.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be accepted in Laura McCungy.
No?
You know? Oh, this is a big joke at the bar we go to. It's like, to these guys, I'm Boston.
You're Boston. You know McCungian.
You're a freaking Patriots fan, aren't you? Like,
That's a good
I'm
point.
not sure if I want to answer that question.
You got to be an Eagles fan, don't you?
Me.
Yeah. Or a Penguins fan. I don't know what the teams are for Lower McCungy. The Lower McCungy Penguins. I would vote for them.
Flyers.
The Philly
Penguins
Flyers.
must be, what do you call it? Pittsburgh, right?
Pittsburgh.
Pennsburg. Yeah, it's Penguins.
Pennsburg.
Lemieux blends.
The Pennsburg.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is, of
Pittsburghians.
course, our hockey expert because he comes from beautiful Canada, Richard Thompson.
Don't have a choice.
Richard Thompson. Richard Thomas. Richard Campbell. I don't know.
He's making
I
names
think
up
you,
now.
John Boy, is who I think you
Now
are.
I desperately need there to be a TV series like Portlandia, but called
Canada.
What did you say?
Canada.
Yes.
Hello, Canada.
Oh, God.
Here we are.
Where are you? Is where
I'm
I want to
home.
know. You're
I'm
home.
home. That's why the view, right? And I got the
I
dual
saw the
camera
view.
rig now, so I can just flip between the views.
So
and,
pretty.
yeah, there's whitecaps out there today. The strong southwesterly coming in. So.
You should see. I have all of these lower thirds for you. Stockholm, Nevada, Romania. I can't even say some of the names.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little tired of this. I also have a view, and that's my view, and screw you guys, okay?
White. Yeah.
That's what I got. I got nothing.
Well,
It's good to be home for a couple of weeks, even.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good on you.
The next time we'll do a show away, I think Paul and I will be together at Build.
How exciting.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Look forward to that.
But all of June on the road, just like utter madness. Like,
Yeah. If my life goes accordingly, I'll be in Mexico in June.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I will be sitting on this little saddle on a stick for the foreseeable future. You don't believe me, do you? But if you look at it,
It sounded more like just the stick.
it's more the stick than the saddle. But see, there's the saddle.
Look at that little thing.
And it's
Look
a
at that
little
thing.
stick.
How small is your butt? How do you fit on that thing?
You perch. It's supposed to be
There you
good
go.
for you.
Yeah.
I do a lot of stupid things because they're supposed to be good for you. Kevin Rose was in on Sunday. He's the king of weird stuff.
Okay.
He always is telling me about the latest thing. Now he gets in a ice bath. He has a custom water chiller thing he gets into.
Dear God.
Dear
There you
God
go.
is right. That sounds painful. So I'm just going to stick with my saddle on a stick. And
Yeah,
that's enough.
we're talking about going the other way. We were talking about putting a sauna in.
He did tell me, actually, that there is good evidence now that a daily 20-minute sauna, not too hot, 175 degrees, reduces the risk of dementia by like 30%. Like, it's significant. So get that sauna. I'm getting a sauna just for that.
That said, buying a sauna is a sign of dementia. So,
good point.
it
Good
kind of
point.
balances.
Excellent point.
Well, and we could, we've got the guest house here, Leo. So if you want to,
I'm dying to come up. I am. I'm actually.
Come shoot from up here. We got good bandwidth. We
want to.
We got gigabit Ethernet. We got two channels coming.
You're very kind. Don't keep saying it because I might take you up on it.
It's
Don't
fun,
say it unless you mean it.
We mean it. It's a new deck.
That's nice. You got the deck in. Good.
Deck's in. No railing, so it's a bit exciting there right now. But I think we get the railings on Friday.
I have a tendency to fall off things, so maybe I will wait until then.
Wait till Friday. Yeah, we'll get the railings then.
A sign of being a middle-aged white man.
I fall a lot. So tell me, gentlemen, what's up in the world of Microsoft?
Well, you'll be happy to hear that from a business perspective, I think Microsoft's going to be okay.
You think they're going to be all right, huh?
They had a good quarter.
That plucky little startup from the Seattle area is they're doing okay.
Ever since they left Albuquerque, things have been looking up.
Yeah, it's been on an upward trajectory ever since Albuquerque. That's true of me as well.
Yeah.
Ever since I left Albuquerque, things have been going better. I miss Albuquerque.
It's just another quarter-over-quarter growth. It's
like stupid growth.
Is it AI driven or is it Azure driven or is it
yes and yes. So the thing, a couple of points here. I wrote about this obviously, and then the next morning I got up and I was reading the paper on my iPad and I saw the news story. I think it was the New York Times. I'm like, let me just read this. Let me see how they kind of frame this, And then we all do this, right? Even though our wives don't care. I kind of blurted out, no company this big should be able to have double-digit growth and profits and revenue with this. What the hell's going on? They're almost 50 years old. Like, what? How? But this is, it's crazy, how successful they are at this. Net income was up 20% year over year. Revenues are up 17% year over year.
Wow.
This should not be possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. But I think
really something.
So. Yeah, and AI and Azure are kind of hand in hand because the one takes the other. So.
But here's I should have found the exact quote, but Amy Hood, the CFO, right, during her talk at the post-earnings conference call, commented on, I don't know if it was in response to a question or she just kind of said this, but she said, we're living in a year in which the figure is variable. I think this particular quarter was $12 billion, but they're investing between $10 and $15 per quarter. $10 and $15 billion per quarter on AI infrastructure. They purchased Activision Blizzard for cash like I would go buy a Twinkie, and their margins are up. This is a company that is just
there's a corollary to this is the alternative is more share buyback, right? You have to put this money to work, and I'd much rather you did this than just bought back shares.
Yeah.
And this is what a public company is supposed to do, is put their money to work.
So the striking difference between Microsoft and say Google, who also had a very similarly awesome quarter, is that Microsoft can attribute a lot of their earnings to AI, a lot of it through Azure, of course. And Google cannot. Google is all ads, So Google is also building out AI infrastructure, and it's weird because we'll talk about this later too. But they really were in the lead until Microsoft decided to do the OpenAI thing and jumpstart it all. And now they're very much perceived as being behind. And it still seems it's kind of weird to me. But a year later, it still seems like they're tripping on their own feet and hitting the rake in the face and all that stuff. So it's kind of an interesting comparison, but these are two companies that are just, going gangbusters either way. Their core businesses are doing great.
Yeah. It's not like Google's going out of business.
No.
They're not innovating at the same rate. It's reflected in the share price. The investment community knows the difference.
Well,
I think that the AI behavior is rational in any way.
Rational. It's rational. I guess from a financial perspective, in the sense that Microsoft now has a decade of experience knowing what drives a stock price, and they're pretty good at gaming that, I guess. Of course, they have to deliver, and that's the whole thing. Richard was the one who said this first last year, that this year is about
the year.
Actually implementing it. They're doing it, right?
And I'm building an interesting story arc on GitHub Copilot now, going back to folks that are 2 years in and how they're changing their behavior with it. We're getting over the rush. I think I feel the same, starting to feel the same way now as I did about the iPad 2 years in, where the iPad was going to be everything the first year. And then it was just a thing. And then it was, when do I ever need to replace this? There's that sort of evolution, and I'm already seeing bits and pieces of it now, which is good. It speaks to maturity.
Okay. You could look back on the history of the computing industry, personal computing, and you see these moments where people are just denying things like mouses and GUIs or internet access and pervasive connectivity. No one's going to ever have fast enough connections for this to make any sense.
Mobile devices as the primary PC.
Exactly. Never going to happen. And it's like, really? I mean, you won't find a bigger support of the PC than I am, but I'm glued to my phone like a teenage idiot.
Your relationship with the phone is completely different. Yeah. Well, and I'm still, sitting here staring at all of this AI stuff going, A, terrible name, and literally an impediment to success, I argue. And B, is this a product or this is a feature of products?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think that's ties into the commentary we had earlier, months ago about there is no such thing as an AI killer app. It's a bunch of little things, right? Yeah. And that is just another way of saying a feature, of other things, right? So AI as a feature for the app you use, it may be Microsoft Word, or AI as a feature for, your web browsing and you want to summarize a document, or AI as a feature for whatever, right? So, yeah.
And again, every time it becomes a useful product, you drop the AI, a summarizer or an image recognizer or data analytics, right? As long as you call it AI, it's because it doesn't work.
Well, yes, that's right. Because, even before this, Microsoft had started referring to things like spell checking, grammar checking as AI, right? It makes it sound more impressive. We're not just comparing a hash table. Oh, we are just anyway, it's AI. Don't listen to that guy.
Everything was in the cloud, right?
So everything's AI. But I think I said this about AI. I think it was AI. I said, if everything is AI, then nothing is AI.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And again, to me, that's also that signal of this is a feature. It's going to integrate in other things. And it's just going to be an expectation that software is responsive this way.
There is still kind of that disruption element to this, though, because I think Google is particularly vulnerable if, we find alternatives to search. Rather than building the next search engine, it's like, well, what if it just wasn't search? What if it was something else? The same way that, for a long time, what Microsoft was worried about with Windows is what if the Mac, or what if Linux, what if net PCs or netbooks and whatever it was, what if these things replace Windows? And it's like, what if it's something that's not a PC, right. Which I don't think a lot of people were ready for, but that's kind of what happened with the phone, right? So, sometimes, this is what has to happen. I mean, it's not, the innovation here is not going to come from, or not the innovation, the disruption is not going to come from Google and search. It's not going to come from Microsoft on the desktop.
No, the disruption did come from Google and search 20 years ago, right?
That's what I mean. I mean, now that they're established, the forces that led them to where they are what
what you're really describing here is Microsoft pivots again.
Yeah,
and here is double-digit growth.
Yes, and again, everyone knows. Yes, Steve Jobs business case study, but I'm telling you, this company is like Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th. Every time you think they're gone, lightning strikes and he comes rising up out of the grave with a machete in his hand
and a sad attitude.
Yeah. So, I mean, not too many surprises in the quarter. Intelligent Cloud, which is Azure, biggest business. By the way, I'll just point this out again, biggest business by revenue, also biggest business by growth, right? Which is kind of, it speaks to it.
And this time last year, or even before that, we were talking about growth rates in cloud are fading off. What are they going to do? Are they just going to say the market is maturing? Nope. Got a new product that runs on the cloud. Growth continues.
That's right.
And this strategy of bundling these different businesses together so that you can paint the numbers you want to paint.
I know. I'm not a fan of, you're talking about the Microsoft Cloud stuff, basically.
Yeah. By the way, just changed Intelligent Cloud to now mean also the AI products.
Yeah. I don't discuss this anywhere and I won't, but other than here, to mention very quickly that I often exclude or do not discuss this thing, the Microsoft Cloud, because it's invented. But I will say, I could be wrong, but I think this was the first quarter they ever actually spelled out what it was. Like it was always like a cherry picking of the best parts of Microsoft, so they could have something that that sort of competed with AWS or Amazon or whatever.
Right.
And this quarter they actually specified which products contributed to it, to the whatever magic number they came up with. Again,
but I'm not going to go down. Do you see that as enough confidence to say we are now a neck and neck, or ahead of AWS? I mean, isn't that the implication?
Yeah, maybe. I wonder if it wasn't just investor confusion because people look at the line numbers and they're like, so you keep talking about this Microsoft Cloud thing, but where's this business? Like it's not a.
But why answer now? People have been asking that for 10 years.
I don't know. I'm just
think it's numbers are recognizing that this is all an act, a legally constrained performance.
Yes.
Well, no decisions here are made by accident. They're all done very carefully.
Right. I'm all saying is this is the first time I believe they've ever done it, and I've never seen it. And
that to me speaks to their numbers are good enough now that they're willing to share.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Of course, we still don't know the constituent percentages of each of those parts.
Let's not get crazy numbers to throw out.
It's still pretty opaque, but productivity and business processes, again, number 2, 12% growth there, almost 20 billion in revenues just by itself. Incredible.
That's
Microsoft's continued use of the term Office 365 in their financial disclosures is oddly troubling to me.
Exists.
I know, but they use it. They used it. You can look it up. They used it. 25 times. It's crazy.
But and then the case for that is because if you're going to call it Microsoft 365, then you're putting Windows revenue in there, and I don't think you want to.
Okay. That's okay. That's interesting. And then more personal computing, which is Windows, and then all this other stuff that does terrible. Well, no, that's not fair. Xbox has Call of Duty now. They're actually doing pretty well if you pretend they don't make hardware. Was brought up the rear as always.
But there are no losses here, right? This is the gerrymandering of financial reports. You have organized it so that everything has growth.
Well, it depends on how granular you could get. And this is as granular as we can get. I think if we were to get into individual businesses like Surface and Xbox, you would see losses, right?
Sure.
There are short-term losses associated with the Activision Blizzard acquisition, which are related to the transition. There were longer-term, or I would say more persistent losses tied to their hardware business, which has done horribly. Like it somehow manages to keep doing worse, But we could make a case for them not making console hardware, although I think that would have whatever the opposite of a virtuous cycle effect. It's the strategic
investment part there.
Yeah, I think it'd be a big problem. And then also for Surface, right? And I do sort of wonder if this isn't going to be a make or break year for Surface. They've kind of chipped away at that product.
New leadership, right?
Yep. Yeah, but
it was a year ago that we saw the crazy.
Yeah, and the year ago was them finally having that moment where they said, we can't keep doing this, and I don't know this, but I suspect that Panos Panay leaving was some combination of him not being okay with these changes here and in Windows, right?
Yep.
And them just not being okay with his continued inability to deliver. So I think, I don't know. I actually don't know, so I shouldn't speculate, but I think it was some combination of those things. So now it's a smaller...
The man did deliver a bunch of great hardware over the years, but
that never sold well. That's the problem.
They weren't meant to, right? They were supposed to be flagship.
Okay, well then I guess it was successful.
Yeah, they were expensive for what they were, right? But they certainly set the high water mark to give a room for the Dells and others to make products that fit underneath there.
Yeah,
that was the kindest interpretation I have of the whole thing, Paul.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Because I like server. The kickers,
you don't want Microsoft to make the best laptop in the space from a price performance perspective, because then they're competing in their own ecosystem, right? Like this is the business that Bill always made. We make the software that runs on all the machines.
Yeah, but this is this is going to be an age old. There's no solution to this debate, right? There's no side. Like it's just. Microsoft's making so much money on cloud, they could lose $1,000 on every Surface device, and they're not going to go broke. But they could totally sabotage the PC ecosystem in the process. Yes,
right.
Okay,
and probably run afoul of the DOJ as the Dells and Lenovo's of the world start screaming bloody murder. So they're not.
Like I said, we're going to constrain the in-house PC company because we don't want to compete with PC makers. Like, what are you doing? Then why do you do this? It's kind of
set a high water mark to make sure the PC makers are making good PCs.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they are setting a high water mark. I think that might be
that is a way more interesting question. Like, are you really building a genuinely superior device at a premium price?
It is weird to me that a type of device that Apple makes is hugely successful on that side of the fence. and you bring it over the PC side, and no one seems particularly interested in it. And I do
But
think
if you want a Copilot button on a keyboard, rather than negotiate with a Dell, you just make one.
Putting a logo on a small piece of plastic, I think, is in Microsoft's wheelhouse. Building high quality, premium PCs, maybe not. I don't know. I will say I'm sort of emotionally pulling toward a Surface laptop myself. That's where my head's at.
I'm holding out. I've got my Surface Studio 2, which I do love, but I'm looking at those Snapdragons, man, and going,
I know.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Yummy.
Yep.
Paul, your review of the MacBook Air was pretty positive.
Yeah.
Got a lot of traction, too. I saw it on Tech Meme.
It depends on who you talk to, Leo. Some people react with horror one way or the other. I don't know.
Say it was perfect, so I'm going to hold that against you.
Yeah, it's not. It's pretty close, though.
I think it's the finest machine made today.
Wow.
And I am not in the Apple ecosystem.
Thanks for deflecting some of the heat from Mr. Thurrott. That's good. Now we can write down.
No, the way I look.
That doesn't make it perfect. Just a fine machine.
My bona fides, which are.
I'm not perfect even. I mean,
okay.
I don't know. Have you seen your chair? It's pretty awesome.
It's perfect.
I can't see it. It's under him.
I'm covering
it
entirely.
Might be in him somewhat. I'm a little concerned here.
In fact, maybe even overlapping it a little bit. Like a tent.
Hopefully it doesn't expand
or something. Yes.
It doesn't pop open like a like a tent.
I got to talk to HR now. This is not the right.
What else? You mentioned Amy Hood's comment that they're doing.
Yeah, that just was the most striking thing to me, and that's it's a good. Richard had kind of said, does them coming clean about Microsoft Cloud show a certain confidence? Yeah, I think her saying that does for sure. I mean, you don't say something like that unless things are going great. Hard numbers are tough with Microsoft. I put some in my article. I didn't really put too many in the notes here, but over 60% of the Fortune 500 is using Copilot, whatever that means. It's not a hard number. But GitHub Copilot, 1.8 million paid subscribers, 35% growth year over year. That's a hard number. That's good. Nice. Bing has over 140 million daily active users.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So, come on.
Who are these people? That's probably
exactly.
Bing AI. It must be up, right? From previous.
Yeah, I think it's they're counting usage of Bing through Copilot, of course.
Yeah.
So there's really not too much there. Activision Blizzard right now is kind of a mixed impact on them, obviously, but this is something that's going to deliver about $2 billion-ish dollars of revenue every quarter. So,
I wonder where they're going to stash that.
Yeah.
I remember reading.
They've got a productivity group. Is this a non-productivity group? It's like they stick it in personal computing.
Fun.
Maybe? I don't know.
The fun. It's the fun. It's where the fun starts.
The party group.
The party group.
And other than, Windows, PC, blah, 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 Surface stuff, I mean, double-digit growth in each of these businesses in the next quarter, too, is the expectation. So everything's going great.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
Yep.
Are they a $3 trillion company yet?
They are.
They have been for a while, yeah.
Yep.
Wow. It's just...
the scale is hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
I know.
And they're doing well. That's the thing. I mean, I think better than even, frankly, better than Apple. Don't tell the Mac Break Weekly boys, but they seem to have a more coherent.
This is do I say this? This is a terrible thing to say in a way, but because Apple is a huge company, they obviously know what they're doing, but there is such a belief in that world that there's a secret. That they don't worry. We have been working on this AI stuff for a year. We're going to destroy everything else.
Remains to be
seen. This is like the Nazis have a secret weapon that's going to end the war kind of theory. Like this almost religious belief that we can't be defeated. So I think the truth is actually somewhere in the middle. I don't think they're also rans or they're going to fall apart or anything. But I think they have so much money and such a rich record of partnering successfully with other companies. I think they're going to be fine. It's hard to say that without laughing. I think they're going to be fine, obviously, and I like their on-device message. I think that's going to be a big chunk of it.
They're talking with OpenAI now. The rumor a few weeks ago was they were talking with Google about Gemini, and now they're talking about OpenAI. Yep. I bet you they offer a variety. Google just shipped Gemini as a replacement, if you want, for Google's Assistant on its phones.
That's right.
Which is kind of interesting. I like Gemini.
Yeah.
Gemini. Gemini. Right. I like Gemini.
That's because you're a hippie. Oh, wait, what are we talking about?
I don't use it for like writing letters. Yeah, I don't use it for prose, but it's great for coding without any extra training. It really does a good job.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I think Google's going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. Everything's okay.
Yep.
Everything's fine. We're fine.
Yep.
How are you?
What could go wrong? Let's talk about Intel. But first,
actually, yeah, let's take a break, and then we will talk about the other companies. There are others. And
just cue the flushing sound as we start that segment.
there are other companies and other learnings to be had. But first, let's talk about learning with ACI Learning. Our show today brought to you by ACI Learning, a longtime partner and a great company. You know the name, I'm sure, because we mentioned it forever, all the time, of IT Pro TV, right? I mean, I'm not springing anything on you when I say that. Well, IT Pro TV is now ACI Learning. And this is really great news for people who are in IT or want to be in IT or have an IT team. Binge-worthy, video-on-demand IT and cybersecurity training, the best there is. With IT Pro, you get certification ready with access to their full video library. It keeps growing. Every time I check, it's bigger. Now it's 7,250 hours. And this is not out-of-date old stuff. They're making new material every week. Premium training plans also include practice tests, which I know from personal experience is the best way to prepare for an exam is to take practice tests so that when you do pay for those exams and take them, you get the cert. You pass. You're good. You're amazing. Virtual labs, that's another great feature of the premium training. You can set up, configure, run Windows servers, Windows clients, all with just an HTML5 browser, which is wonderful because if you screw it up, as I did, you just close the tab and come back again another day. You don't have to have all that hardware to play with it. And, it's interesting. MSPs and teams love this because you can test configurations, too, before you roll them out. IT Pro from ACI Learning makes training fun. And that's important, too. When you've got a team and you say, okay, I got 50 hours of training for you, if they don't go, oh, great, if they go, oh, it's going to be like pulling teeth. But they love the IT Pro training. It's engaging, produced in a talk show format. They call it edutainment. That's because their trainers are experts in the field. They're not book learned. They're out there in the field doing this stuff. And what's interesting, they have a real passion for it. And I think that's what makes it great. It communicates. It makes you excited about what you're learning. Take your IT career or your cyber career to the next level. Be bold, train smart with ACI Learning. If you're an individual, visit go.acilearning.com/twit and use the offer code TWIT30 at checkout. You'll save 30% on your first month or first year of IT Pro training. That's big savings. Go.acilearning.com/twit. The offer code's TWIT30. Go.acilearning.com/twit. And don't forget that offer code, TWIT30. All right, let's talk about those other guys. There are other companies in the tech sphere.
Other guys?
Those other
sure
guys.
Are, and they all stink.
They all suck. I hate them all.
I hate them all. No. Yeah. So we've seen, and we are going to see today, multiple indications that the PC market is making a little bit of a comeback this year, which is kind of nice. And Intel is one proof point for that. Their client computing group, which is responsible for microprocessors that ship in PCs, $7.5 billion in revenues, up 31% year over year. Now, granted, last year was what we might call
when you're coming from the depths of darkness.
Yeah,
but, a little bit of light is a lot.
Yeah, and we're leaving aside the quality of these actual chips for now. 5 million AI PCs have shipped with the new Core Ultra processors so far. They now expect to beat their previous forecast of 40 million by the end of 2024.
Do they really think the AI part is what's selling them, or is it just because it's the next chip out?
We are overdue for a buying cycle, and I think that plays a bigger. This is a big thing. I have I think I'd link to it later, but yeah,
certainly advice I gave on Run As for last year, which was, hey, this is the year to talk to your CFO about not buying machines, maybe get some extended warranties, because everybody was jumpy. Well, it's a new year, man, and maybe it's time to buy. Those extended warranties are getting expensive too.
We're going to mention AMD briefly in a second, but Intel and AMD, their next gen chips, which Intel in their case says will ship in volume in the second half of this year, right? So the Core Ultra Gen 2 chips will finally offer the level of, for lack of a better term, AI acceleration or performance, whatever you want to call it, in their NPUs.
But this is killing me. This is the measure of PCs.
We're gonna get there. I feel right now we're using incomplete and incorrect language, but it will finally reach this the level at which Qualcomm is at, or will soon be at, right, with this first gen of Snapdragon Elite chipset. So heading into 2025, I think we're going to be on kind of even footing there. It shouldn't surprise anybody listening to this that the first generation of anything is usually not quite there, and will quickly be surpassed by something that, is refined or better in some way. So I now have tested, or am in the process of testing, like all three, what do you call it? Not generations, but tiers of Intel's current gen Core Ultra. And the one thing they have in common is they're all pretty middling, honestly. And I don't mean just AI, I mean just across the board, right? So anyway, the problem for Intel is that even though they were profitable again for the first time in quite a while, and they had a revenue gain year over year, they warned about the current quarter. And I don't think anyone, I'm not sure. This is almost turning into Steve Jobs at Next, where it's like you're years in and you're like, haven't these guys been telling the same story for a while? Like, when's this going to turn around?
Yeah. You're going to have a good news quarter at some point, right?
It almost has to happen,
going to be
right?
A surprise.
Yeah. I'd have to go back and look, and I'm too lazy to do this, but Intel right now by revenue is still over twice the size of AMD. But weren't they like 4 times? What's going on here? Yeah. There's definitely a wave that has lifted Microsoft that has not helped Intel on the hardware side, right? And a lot of that is self-determination. Intel had a bunch of strategic mistakes, I think. But anyway, here we are. The world has changed, and they haven't really adapted to it yet. So we'll see what happens. Intel may, if they are successful, it may ultimately work out that the way that they're successful is in building chips for other companies, right? They might become that kind of back end.
And you hear this
producer
line every so often of, we should just become a foundry, like they have TMSC, TMSC envy. But I think most other companies envy the fact of, you're the original CPU maker, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be the land of innovation.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
And this has come up with some other things I've been doing lately. And I'm like, listen, every time Intel has really innovated, come up with a new chip design entirely, their customers have punished them for it. Right? Now one would argue it's just because they've come up with bad designs. But at the same time, it's like, there's a reason they've stuck on the x86 chipset. It's the only thing they don't get crucified for each time they try and deliver.
Yeah, they've had some good moments in there. I'm trying to think of one. There was the 8th gen where they doubled up the cores, and that was fun. With no efficiency downside. That was good.
We haven't got any good ideas. Let's just put in more.
It is the Intel playbook. This is the megahertz wars, guys.
These are the guys who invented the whole, you build for the next generation machine because you're going to get all this additional performance, except for that part where you just
the world's move on. This is the thing. This is the central argument that I find myself in these days, is always with enthusiasts who can't accept that like web apps make any sense, that simple things like Chrome OS make any sense. They're all like, I want the cockpit of the 727. Yeah. And I think that's the Intel world, and it's like, most people are just using these fanless small mobile devices. And it's fine,
No, and it's generally like they you're talking about them just being trapped in the previous generation, and still, like, are they not going to modernize? Now they got enough money, and they certainly have enough.
They're spending
legacy.
it, and
they
get help by the U.S. government. That works.
It's just a question of, are they going to find their way forward?
Yeah,
I don't worry about any of these companies going broke today, but you're either finding a way forward or you're not. And really, what I see in the Intel reporting is we haven't found our way forward.
I don't have any issues with Pat Gelsinger. I think you're given the situation you have. Given he looked at Intel and. Obviously, I'm sure he really debated taking this job, understood it was going to be a huge challenge, and I think he's doing the best he can do with, you go to war with the army, you get, but you're kind of, it's just like anyone, like someone who takes over Windows today, for example, you're kind of stuck with the decisions from the past. There's not much you can do. You can't just turn on a dime and say everything's going to be different again because nobody cares. You got to transition. So I think they're doing what they can do. I just feel like with Intel, I think we expected it to happen a little more quickly, and it's starting to wear,
Yeah, it's just these things take a long, these deaths come slowly. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And there's plenty of opportunities to right the ship, right? You think about IBM's transformation to a services company. Not that I think it became, as wildly relevant as they once were, but they know how to make money.
No, that's the thing. They're a stable money-making machine that nobody cares about, but, fine.
That's fine.
I don't, companies that like Intel, Microsoft are like this. They rode this wave of fame and success, right? Not just success, but fame. And they want to be the center of attention still. And it's like, no offense, but you guys are kind of like plumbing. We've moved on. So it's not a horrible future if you can make money doing it, but it's not like the past.
Well, and I definitely feel like they're burdened by this instruction set and this architecture that just have not had the nerve to shake off. And we're at the cusp now where a new architecture is able to emulate them faster than they can run their own stuff.
Was it the Z80 that was just the mainstream normal version of the Z80 that just went out of production, the Zilog chip? Right,
they were still making Z80s?
They were.
I believe until like last week.
What?
So here's the thing, like
must
this
be in
will
light
be the
bulbs or something now.
Yeah,
right?
like the Motorola or not Motorola, the what do you call it? The not Motorola, the what was it?
TI.
What's it called? The 6502, whatever that is.
Yes,
MOS technology.
The MOSFET, MOS.
Same thing. Like just decades of life. Well past the point where it's kind of famous for being in personal computers, whatever. There's no doubt that the x86 will outlive all of us in some capacity. It's the cockroach of the microprocessor world, but
it's in the instruction set of the AMD.
Yeah, but as far as it being relevant, it's hard. We might have already. I think peak Intel, peak x86, we'll call it. It's probably a long time ago, right? I don't even want to think about that. That's kind of scary, but I think we're moving on here.
We've hit peak x86. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I think we possibly hit that
way past
2002 or something. I don't even know. I really I'd have to really think about that.
Yeah.
And what does it even mean? But the PC market peaked in what, 2011? I think.
Yeah, 2011. Yeah. I also think
that'd be the
that
peak.
was on Windows.
That'd be the peak.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
300 something. There was gonna be a day when there were 500 million PCs sold a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
But now there are phones and tablets, and I don't know. You could apologize and say, "Well, those are computers too." Okay, relax. You know what we meant.
Yeah, man. There's so much computing and everything now that, of course, these legacy nodes will live forever.
Yeah.
It's probably, though, I have to say, a 6502 is much better as an embedded processor. That was its original intent anyway.
Yeah, and there's a simplicity to it,
right,
that makes it very attractive. It's known to be reliable,
right?
That what's the Voyager out in space is probably using one of those kind of chips. It's probably
exactly.
One of the reasons these things work,
right?
Is because thank God it's not running in it. They would have had like a Pentium flaw. We would have discovered it when it was out by Saturn.
Oh, there's no floating point anymore. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Yes, right, exactly. We'll just disable that part of the chip.
Yeah. We're roughly 60 trillion miles away.
Yeah. And then, the other side of the x86 coin, AMD, also, not great. I mean, almost flat earnings, honestly. I think it was a 2% gain. Yeah, 2% in revenues, $5.5 billion. Their PC business, though, again, they tanked. They had a massive loss a year ago, but the revenues are up 185%, right? They're almost doubled, right? 1.4 billion.
Wow.
So they are also touting AI accelerated, in their case, Ryzen, whatever they are, 8,000, I think, series chips. X number of partners are going to deliver AI PCs based on these processors by the end of the year. They're doing great.
They also have an ARM node, don't they? I mean, I know Intel says they do, but I think AMD really does, doesn't they? Don't they?
I think it didn't. If Intel does, this is new because they actually at one point Intel dropped ARM.
I thought they
actually stopped licensing.
Never mind. Yeah.
AMD could, for sure. In fact, I got to be honest, I kind of expected them to go ARM at some point. I'm surprised you don't hear more about that. But anyway, but AMD, like Intel, will have a next-gen AI PC-based microprocessor that will be competitive from an NPU perspective with what Qualcomm has, which is like saying you have a Maserati that will be competitive from a steering wheel perspective with a Volkswagen Beetle, but whatever, they'll get there. So that's fine. And then the rest of that company's not doing that. Well, their data center stuff is doing actually very well. Their data center stuff is bigger than their PC stuff. Actually, AMD is. So that's good. Thanks to GPUs, right? So they used to sell a lot of gaming GPUs. Now they sell a lot of data center GPUs. And what the hell is this world we're living in? What happened? It's so weird. It's just so different, Like I said, Alphabet, Google, which is Google, right? I mean, Google being 105% of Alphabet's revenues, 105% rather. $80 billion in revenues, bigger than Microsoft. $23 billion in net income. Those are also double-digit gains. Not quite as big on the revenue side, but 15.4%, still good. What is the figure here? 77% of their revenues came from advertising.
Wow.
Right.
Still a one-product company,
Yep, that is the ultimate definition of a one-product company. It's brutal, but Google Cloud keeps growing really well. 28% this quarter, 9.6 billion in revenues, not bad. And then this seems fairly new to me, but Google subscriptions, platforms, and devices, which may reflect that new reorg, right? 8.7 billion in revenues. No word on profitability there, but nobody cares. And then, they didn't really talk too much about AI other than talking about how great AI was, right? This is one of those things like Amazon does this. They talk a lot about like milestones and things that they did in the quarter. And it's like, yeah, but how much did you make from the Kindle? They don't really do that. So Microsoft was very explicit about AI. Google was not. Amazon makes more money than God.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that.
Much lower, but at much lower margins.
Yeah, that's right. Remember, it costs them a full 45 cents on average to ship something to you. So they're doing great. Amazon, they're going to be a business case study. It's unbelievable.
They are.
They had their own challenges, $2 billion non-operating loss associated with that Rivian investment. Doesn't matter. $10.4 billion in profits, $143.3 billion in revenues. It's like, are you kidding me?
That's AWS, cash flow.
Yep. 17% growth. That's doing awesome. So that is now, they call this it's not really a $100 billion company, but they're on a $100 billion annual run rate, which is a cute way of saying in one quarter they made 25 billion. So if you multiply that by 4, it's a run rate. See, it's $100 billion. So it's not really, but maybe it will be next year. We'll see.
That's
the idea, right? I mean, that's what it means.
That's what it means.
That's the number. And then blah, blah, blah. Store's doing great. By the way, our advertising business, huge, 24% growth, of course.
Yeah, actually, that's the big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. That's, Microsoft and Amazon both. They're like, we can do this.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing this? Let's
ads
do this.
Are good.
So yep.
Ads are money.
Well, they're easy money, right? So that thing's growing faster than stores, growing faster than AWS. It's almost 12 billion in revenues. It's awesome. It's almost like, it's not quite free money, but isn't it? So they're going gangbusters. There's not a lot of hard data from Amazon. A lot of froofy customers are excited about something. Who cares? I don't know. They're if you could condense their earnings announcements down to 3 sentences that have dollar signs in them, it's nothing. No, it's ridiculous. Like they're impossible to read. In fact, I should use AI for that. Summarize this and only use the sentences that have dollar signs. It'd be 3 sentences. I guarantee it'd be nothing. And then Samsung, not a big deal here, but they've rebounded as well. They obviously overtook Apple last quarter, and their phone and memory businesses are doing great.
Doing great.
So they're going to have new flagships, more AI, blah, 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 all the stuff, everything you would expect.
Lovely.
All right. What's the show called again? Oh, Windows.
Windows.
Let's
Let's do Windows. Let's say some Windows stuff here.
let's talk about Windows.
Exciting.
So we're starting
not
to
always earnings season. It's just usually earnings.
It feels like it is always. It feels like we do this like every 3 months.
You're writing about this. But you're kidding me? This is like torture for me. I don't remember what day the other day I finished up late doing something. I think my wife was heading out to go to the gym or whatever. I'm going to work on the book. It's going to be nice. I cracked open my laptop. I'm like, I think it was, it was a Google. It was last Thursday. Google, Microsoft. I'm like, oh, damn it. And it was like other companies too, like Roku and a couple of Spotify, or there was a couple of others. And I was like, this is like, I ended up working past the time she got home. You know, it was just,
end of the quarter, everything is ruined.
Yeah. It's just, I don't even know. I should see this coming. I know it's coming. And then it happens. And it's like a surprise. Anyhow. So we've been dribbling, or we haven't been, but Microsoft or sources, rumors, whatever, there's been a bunch of information about 24H2. So this is a part of the company that is particularly non-transparent, but back in February through the Insider program, they said, hey, by the way, this thing you're testing now in Dev and at the time Canary is 24. It's 24H2. It's the next feature update. It's coming later in the year. Since then, we've learned a lot more about it. It's still kind of dribbling out, but it's starting to come together. And I think a week or two ago, whatever it was, we talked about this kind of staged rollout where part of it's going to happen in time for these new Snapdragon-based PCs. Mm-hmm. And then the other part of it's going to happen in the second half of the year at the normal schedule. So there'll be a 24H2, and then they'll keep adding to it, because nothing matters anymore. Versions don't mean anything. It doesn't matter. So I'm that's me coping with it. So let's just leave it there. And the stuff we're getting in the short term is small, and the stuff we're getting in the term is it's fuzzy. And I think we're going to learn more at Build.
Makes sense.
But yeah, we learned, or we're learning through some people like Zach Bowden, et cetera, that there's an AI Explorer feature coming, which to me is very vague, and I don't quite understand it. You might have heard this rumor that it might be exclusive to Qualcomm. I'm actually wondering if it's not exclusive to a certain level of performance that as the AMD and Intel NPUs get up to speed, that they'll be allowed into this world, that the current ones just
you got to be
work
45
well
tops or something.
Yeah, something. That's one. I'm just guessing on that one, but it doesn't make sense to me that they would make anything exclusive to a product line that to date has sold 7 copies and exclude the volume part of the market.
This AI to play.
Yeah, to get this AI exactly like a ride at the park. Yeah, I think there's something to that. And then I read the description of this, and I have no idea what we're talking about anymore. So this is like, if you thought AI was already unnecessary, unwanted on your computer, how do you feel about something that will run in the background all the time, capture everything you do, create memories for you like OneDrive does now with your photos? You can search for anything you've done using natural language, which I take to mean like a chatbot type thing, like we have now with Copilot. And what did I just describe? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, you've described M365 Graph, except now running in your machine locally.
Yeah, and this is, this is a problem, I guess, for Microsoft, for lack of a better term, that, in the commercial space, they do have the graph, right? And we'll get onto some Microsoft 365 stuff, but I can assure you that the April update for Copilot Microsoft 365 is all about the graph, right? I mean, this is grounding AI, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot harder to do this for individuals, which is why they're pushing OneDrive so hard on people. It's why they're pushing this new Outlook so hard on people. If they can get you into the little ecosystem here, they'll have a lot more data to work off of, right?
Yeah.
And they'll know more about you. And, right now, Microsoft knowing more about you says a lot about, to me, it's a lot about advertising, and it sounds terrible. Tracking and all the stuff you don't want in Windows, So I'm not sure how people are going to react to this.
I mean, the happy part of this is the Viva email, right? When you're in M365, you get an email every so often. It's saying, hey, you know how you said to so-and-so that you do that thing by the end of the day? Did you do it? Because I never saw the email of you following me.
And I would have seen it because I'm looking at everything.
Because I'm watching everything. Yeah. So, I
just
mean,
cue up the Sting song there, or the
Paul,
song.
this is what we were talking about. If Windows was going to be the hub, it's because it can see across all applications, not just Microsoft.
Yeah, you're right. So when Cortana was briefly a thing in Windows, I went through a 3-month period where I got a lot of complaints from people who are like, "What is this thing? Why it needs all these permissions? Why would I do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. You click the button. What like if it's a personal assistant. I mean, by nature, it needs to know about you,
stuff.
right?
That's how it is.
You don't want this person knowing what you're doing with your calendar, they can't be your assistant. That's the point, right? And that kind of came when, Cortana obviously didn't take off on the desktop, so it wasn't really a big
Cortana didn't take off anywhere, but
true.
except maybe in the video game.
Right. And even there, she went insane.
And tried to kill everybody. Oh, the AI meme returned.
A great name to use for something you want people to use in their houses.
But calling it AI Explorer doesn't make it better. That's a terrible name.
It's Explorer. What does that mean? Like Explorer? Like we're doing
who's exploring who here?
And what are we examining here exactly?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think this is going to rub people the wrong way. Based on everything I've seen so far from people and their reactions to AI. So we'll see how they market this.
It's got to be packaged as an assistant of some kind. And so, yes, it needs all of those rights. What you described is essentially the issue. The real challenge here is presenting the benefit.
That's what I mean. Like you have to, exactly. We're going to see how they do that. And the problem is for this to work, it kind of has to be not so much opt-in as just in,
Yeah.
And no
the question is, when you say AI Explorer, are you thinking alternative to File Explorer? Because that's
what it sounds like, but that's not what it sounds like. No, this is a back-end
File Explorer has been going really well lately. I don't know if you've been listening to the show, but
remember when people used to complain like that you'd be using a Windows computer and you would stop doing anything, like you stop typing. Yep. And then all of a sudden the hard drive would spin up and the light would come on and they were like, what is this thing doing? What is it doing? And it was this huge conspiracy thing. It's sending information to the Russians. It's like whatever it is. And what it was doing was indexing your drive because when you weren't using the computer, it would do that. So this is kind of the new version of that, right? I mean, and in that case, it was nothing. I mean, it was to your benefit. I mean, honestly, it worked logically. Like do it when the person's not using the computer. Mm-hmm. Don't impact performance. But we live in a different age, right? I mean, we have infinite processing power.
Yeah.
This thing is. I don't know. I don't know. And look, I suppose to some degree you'll be able to, if not turn this off, at least minimize the data collection, right?
Yeah.
But
I don't even care about minimizing it. Show me what you know. Right.
Yeah.
This is what the GDPR got right back in the day was what do you know about me? I get that you're indexing, but show me the index. What do you know?
So if you go up to your Microsoft account page, the site, account.microsoft.com, and go to the privacy section, you can see the information that Microsoft has collected about you through Bing, through Edge, through Windows, whatever. And you can delete it. You can do different things with it. Mm-hmm. You can't stop them from collecting it, but you can go in manually and say, okay, whatever there is there now is gone. So there is that. I think there'll be something like that. I would assume, right? There'll have to be something
sort of
like
right
that
to be forgotten kind of thing.
Well, it's not a right to be forgotten. It's a right to delete what we already collected, but we're going to keep collecting.
Yeah, you're not going to stay forgotten. You just it's like we're meeting for the first time. Let's go collect all your data again.
This is a fun little game I play with the Dropbox promotion app that's on so many PCs. I right click it and say uninstall.
Right,
and then I wait for 2 seconds and I watch it reappear in the start menu, and then I say right click uninstall. And I wait a few seconds and it comes back and it's like, for those 2 seconds, I got exactly what I wanted. It was fine.
I don't know why you're so unhappy.
It's a little bit like that. So like I said, we'll see. There's not enough information yet. And of course, we have not been presented with this.
But at the same time, I was wondering where this was. So I'm feeling like, okay, somebody's trying.
Yeah.
Because Windows did have an opportunity to be important here. It may be late. But you're also getting that sense of they are feeling around. That's why it's in the insider program, because they don't know what they want.
I feel like a lot of my readers have got their finger poised above an eject button, and they're just waiting for what they consider to be the final insult. And it's going to be related to AI. I think it really is like, the tracking. When you say something like, we're going to track what you do with Windows. And the reason is it's not nefarious. We want to make Windows better for everybody. So this is a way we can see if there are common problems. And if there are, we'll fix them. And okay, I mean, like on some vague theoretical level, this sounds fine. A lot of people still don't like it. I mean, I do agree. I mean, you should, even if you have to jump through some hoops, you should be able to turn that off. But because most people wouldn't, right? But they don't give you that, and it's like, okay, it's a vaguely weird that they don't do that. And then But then, this is the behavior that leads to this, right? It's like we got so good at this telemetry thing, and we're gonna like pile that data into this. And they'll even say stuff. I bet they'll say stuff like, the data we collect in you doesn't leave the machine. Well, how could it not, though? It has to go to your Microsoft account. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm not nervous about this for me. Like, I don't know enough yet to care, but I'm just seeing how people are reacting to things already. I'm thinking this is going to be a bridge too far for some people. So,
yeah, I wonder, but eject to where? Because I got to think we're all excited about Apple's upcoming AI offering. Do you think it's going to be different than this?
Well, I mean, it will probably be more on device, and they do have that. I'm not saying it's real, but they do have that. What stays in your iPhone, or what happens in your iPhone stays in your iPhone.
Goes to iCloud and occasionally gets leaked. Yeah,
it stays on your iPhone. I don't know why we have to dick around with the semantics. The point is, no, I'm agreeing with you. I don't know. Yeah, is Apple the answer for everybody? No. Is Chromebook an answer for everybody? No. Is Linux an answer for anybody? No. but yeah, the fact that we're kind of stuck with Windows is not the message I want to send to anybody. But
no. Well,
these things tend to do best when they do have competition and an actual threat. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if they.
Well, and again, it's like, is this going to provide us as the customer some advantage, or is it just another way to harvest our data for their income?
It's impossible to hear that and not think it's the latter, right? I'm not trying to be cynical, but
we've already seen them go down this path, right? This is what happened with Edge.
That's right. Yep, exactly. Edge, don't get me started on Edge. I've been updating the book for Edge, and you think earnings is bad for me mentally. I think Edge is even worse. That's brutal. I love Edge because it abuses you when you choose to use it. That's the
there are alternatives.
You think it's bad when you chose Chrome and it still berates you. Just choose Edge and watch it still berate you. It's a perfect example of an abusive relationship. Anyhow, so a couple of points from the Insider program. There was a beta channel build last week, and not much going on there, although they are fixing the the address bar issue, right? Where they replaced it with that WinUI control, and now you can't drag files to it. So that's going to be fixed. And they call those, if you think about the path that appears in the address bar, those segments, it's called a breadcrumb. They used to call it a breadcrumb bar. In fact, I think that was the name of it at one point internally. But each of those, each folder on the way to the current folder is a breadcrumb, right? And you can drag to, as you could in the past. This is not a new feature, but you're going to soon be able to again drag to that breadcrumb and have that file copy or move to that location, right? Like a normal file explorer. So that's fun. They took away Show Desktop briefly because of the Copilot button moving. You could re-enable it optionally, but now they're just going to enable it by default because I think that screwed people up. And that's most widgets and stuff. Who cares? I think last week we talked about a dev channel build where whatever happened. But since that thing came out, now this is 24H2, right? This is the 26100 series build numbers now. This is what's going to be that first release of 24H2. And a bunch of people have noticed that all of the local account workarounds during setup don't work anymore, right? This is the NRO stuff, the hello or whatever, the fake Microsoft account, and you could blah blah whatever, the Rufus stuff, right? So I spent a good chunk of the weekend working with this, and what I discovered was that yes, it's true. Those workarounds, like the ones I published in the book, will stop working in 24H2. They're not getting rid of local accounts. At the very least, you'll always be able to sign in with an MSA, create a local account, sign in with that, and then never use the MSA again. You could delete it, whatever. That will always work. I don't really see a world in which local accounts go away, but talk about eject buttons. That's going to be a big one for people if that ever happens. But there is another workaround that does work, and I believe this works today too, but only in Pro. So when in Pro, when you set it up, you have a choice to configure for a personal or work or school account. The personal one is an MSA, obviously. But even if you intend to use a local account now, you can choose the work one, and then there's actually a screen where you say choose another way. Whatever the link says, you just click the little link that says another way to sign in, and you just create a local account. Like, it just works. So that's there. At least it's not going to help people on home. I do think that we're going to see other workarounds, and they'll be formalized into tools like Rufus and so forth. So I wouldn't stress too much over that. The new Teams client is the Unified Teams client is there. It's super buggy and terrible, but it is there. And then some minor changes like quick quick settings. You can scroll through all the little buttons in there. It used to be one screen only, and now you can scroll through. Spotlight is on the desktop by default. That's kind of fun if you like that stuff. I mean, nothing big. So I think the 24H2 release we get initially, the one for the Qualcomm stuff, is going to be a fairly minor update. And then the big stuff happens the second half of the year. Is the way it's starting to unfold.
And like I said, we probably know more in the build time frame, which should take a couple more weeks.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was a week or two ago I mentioned Tiny 11 Builder, which is a PowerShell script written by NTDev, the guy who did the Tiny 11 and other things before that, that basically turns off as much of Windows 11 before you set it up as possible, with the goal of having a smaller footprint, right? Which is not a huge issue for me, and I don't think for most people, right? I mean, most people just have super powerful computers with more stuff than they need, but I do think there's a GUI probably coming here, and an option people will work, because it's just a PowerShell script. Anyone could edit this, and I could say like, look, I want this thing, but I do want Clipchamp installed or whatever it might be, right? But when I evaluated it and I compared it to my checklist of things that were wrong with Windows 11, it didn't solve any of the big problems. These are the forced OneDrive and Edge usage stuff, and he is working on it. He was nice enough to, he kind of chimed in on my forums, my comments thing, which I liked. But he has since updated it and has in fact addressed one of those Windows 11 and certification issues, which is telemetry related. This thing will not send data back to Microsoft. Now, could Microsoft update your computer in 2 seconds to fix that problem? Of course. This is it's just like the Cold War. Yeah, we're going to go back and forth on that one for a long time. But the point is, he's finding this stuff, and he's looking very explicitly at certain issues to see if he can fix those. A lot of them having to do with the harassment stuff, where pop-ups are coming up and so forth. So it's a good tool, and I think it's about to get. It's gotten a little bit better, and I think it's going to get a lot better over time. So it's something I'm going to keep looking at, because I maintain I use Tiny 11, the predecessor, to build out a laptop using Windows 11 without Edge, and I keep that thing up to date. I use it,
nice.
And Edge has not reappeared. It's just an experiment for me. I don't really care if Edge is there, but that one's been working fine. So, it's possible.
He's doing God's work.
Yeah,
Do you have to have an ISO? How does it work? You download the ISO, and then it
yeah. So the problem with Tiny 11 was that he used Microsoft, he used Microsoft's kind of deployment tools to create his own custom ISO, and you got to be careful with that kind of thing, right? Yeah. You don't know what you're getting. I mean, I do trust this guy, but I can't tell anyone else to trust him.
It's not a good way to deliver stuff.
Yeah, This is not. So the way this works is you download the stock ISO from Microsoft, and then you run a PowerShell script against it to create a custom version.
Perfect. Yeah.
And you can read the code. So if you're worried about it doing anything screwy, just look at the code.
Nice.
Yeah, and you could customize it to your own needs.
It's a decrapifier from the command line. Yeah.
It's like a pre-crapifier. It does it before you install it. It doesn't.
Yeah,
right?
I love that.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah,
I might wipe this drive and start over.
Yeah,
I was thinking about this machine needing a wipe. It's the older one.
Yeah.
I spend half my time every week doing this kind of thing. This is all I do is install Windows. I install Windows more than I use Windows at this point.
It'd be nice if it used WinGet and kind of built the system, took out everything and then used WinGet to build it up, and you could have a whole deployment.
There's lots of room for improvement at every step of this way. Honestly, I'd like to see some automation with WinGet for updating, and I'd like to see some WinGet based configuration stuff.
Is WinGet scriptable at all?
Well, I mean, I do have scripts that I use to run WinGet as a command in the script. Is that what you mean? You can put it in a script. I mean,
but you can't you can't break it down to smaller molecules.
No, I mean, it has constituent, commands and so forth.
Yeah. Sounds like it is.
Yeah, I suppose you could create a startup task every time you sign in, have it just run, WinGet update star, whatever.
That would be nice. Yeah.
That should just be part of the system, right? I mean, that should be
All right, let's take a time out and come back. We have lots more to talk about. You're watching Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. Our show today brought to you literally brought to you by CacheFly. For over 20 years, CacheFly has held the track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery, serving over 5,000 companies in over 80 countries. We're one of them. We've been using CacheFly practically since the beginning. We are in our 20th year now, and I think it was only about 2 or 3 years in, maybe even not even that long, before I was howling, I need help. And Matt Levine of CacheFly, one of the founders, came to me and he said, I can help. And he did, and we are still with CacheFly, our content delivery network. We love the lag-free video loading, the hyper-fast downloads, the friction-free site interactions. You know what I really love? You don't even know it, right? You just get the files, and it's like, fine, they all came in. Was there anything special about that? Yeah, there was no trouble. I love it. CacheFly is the only CDN built for throughput. With ultra-low latency video streaming, you can deliver video to over 1 million concurrent users with less than 1 second latency. That's incredible. If you got a game, you got lightning fast gaming, which delivers downloads faster, but you can also play faster, zero lag, zero glitches, no outages. You get mobile content optimization, offering automatic, simple image optimization. Your site will load faster on any device. Flexible month-to-month billing for as long as you need, and discounts for fixed terms. Design your contract. We did when we switched to CacheFly. CacheFly delivers rich media content up to 158% faster than other major CDNs and allows you to shield your site content in their cloud. You know what that means? A 100% cache hit ratio. We've been using that for some time. I'm really glad they offer it to everybody now. And with CacheFly's elite managed packages, you get the VIP treatment. We always do. Your dedicated account manager will be with you from day one, ensuring a smooth implementation and reliable 24/7 support when you need it. But I got to tell you, you're probably not going to need it. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times we've called CacheFly in 20 years. They're just great. It just works. Learn how you can get your first month free at cachefly.com/twit. CACHEFLY.com/twit. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, CacheFly. We couldn't do it without you. On the Vigo with Windows Weekly. What do you want to do now, boys?
Where are we now?
I don't know. I've lost track.
What planet is this?
Microsoft
we're
365.
at M365.
Okay.
Well, this one's good because it's a little bit of both. So this is the third month where Microsoft has provided a kind of monthly all up. Here's what's new in Copilot for Microsoft 365. Most of the features they talk about are actually coming in the coming month. Some of them have just been made available in the previous month or just that day becoming available. But most of the stuff is like happening in May. And a lot of it is grounding based. And to Rich's point earlier is kind of how you see Copilot as a feature of Microsoft 365, right? Mm-hmm. You have Copilot chat inside of Outlook, and this is all versions of Outlook. Don't freak out. It's not just the new one. It works in classic Outlook, Outlook on the web, et cetera. Oh, and I should say this is commercial Microsoft 365, not the consumer version. Because that's the only place you can get Copilot, right? Well, that's where you get Copilot for Microsoft 365. Obviously, we have Copilot Pro, but grounded chat, grounded to the Microsoft Graph. In other words, grounded to your organization. So you can go in and ask it questions or get information that does not involve the internet or anything out in the world. It's just stuff inside of your company, chats, emails, files, et cetera. So there's going to be a lot of this stuff. And I think a lot of fine tuning of this stuff. Copilot grounded to local data. That's very interesting, right? Mm. So apparently I don't have the commercial version, but I guess you can already do this for data stored in OneDrive or OneDrive for Business, right? Or SharePoint, but starting in May, they're going to allow you to also include locally stored files on your computer as well. So again, you're doing whatever you're doing with Copilot, and it will take that stuff into account rather than working off of some global data source. Same thing with Microsoft Word, right? There's some efficiency stuff coming. It's a long list of stuff, but basically you're writing a document and you can ask it questions that are grounded to the graph. In other words, does this meet our corporate standards? Is this violating any, NDA information, whatever it might be? It will take into account anything that's in the Microsoft Graph. So this is like just everywhere. Like it's very interesting. I can't say that, looking through this list, I mean, none of this is particularly exciting, but it's all very kind of pragmatic stuff. A lot of commercial data protection stuff. You want to make sure that this thing is secure, it works properly, et cetera. They're kind of expanding the reach of the product so that you can access Copilot, not just in any app, but also like you have the Copilot mobile app. It can be grounded to your work data, and also make sure that that doesn't get out into the world, all that kind of stuff. So it's all, it's that basically. Separately, they announced just Copilot for Microsoft 365 coming to 16 more languages, including Klingon. And it was whatever, and like all the stuff you would expect. No big deal there.
And it is one of the strengths of LLMs, right? Is the tokenization strategy makes it very naturally multilingual.
Yep, and it's going to be 17 very soon. It actually works with there's two Chinese, right? Is it like mainland and whatever the traditional and mainland?
Yes.
So both work. One is supported, but the other will be supported this month. It's just that they have some fine tuning to it. They don't want to officially support it, but if you want it, you can enable it. It's there. And that stuff can only get better, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one, I'm curious. I have been wondering why we don't have offline capabilities in what I still think of as the Office web apps, right? The web versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, especially.
Right.
I guess exclusively, actually. That seems like a curious limitation, one that maybe is on purpose, right? But Microsoft recently redesigned the OneDrive web app for both commercial and consumers. Obviously, same back end, just like with the OneDrive app in Windows. And now on the commercial side, they are this month enabling offline capabilities in OneDrive for the web, including files on demand. And what is the use case? I guess in the commercial space with a BYOD scenario, you could have a user who is on their own computer and doesn't want to or can't, whatever it is, maybe it's insecure to install the OneDrive client. I'm trying to imagine what the point is, but you use the web app instead of the file system integration. I suppose if you're using a Chromebook, this would help, right? Because it doesn't have sync there, or Linux. But I don't know if anyone listening to this has an idea. I'm trying to understand what the use case is here, like why they would do this, but also why they would do this first, as opposed to like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. But now I'm wondering, actually, after the story had been, I didn't write the story, Laurent wrote the story, but after I kind of went through this, I thought, maybe this is the first step toward what I just described, that to get these kind of like document-based applications, web applications to work properly, this infrastructure work has to happen first, right? And that it would be very Microsoft to have offline capable versions of the web versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint that only work offline in any meaningful way if you're using OneDrive, right? Instead of like saving to your local disk. And plus that'd be easier from a data protection standpoint to protect those documents. Maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speculating. I actually don't know, but I'm confused about what the use case is for a web app version of a cloud storage service having offline capabilities. Like, I don't quite get it. I refuse to believe it's to make Chromebooks better, but maybe. I don't know, maybe. I will say, in a random coincidence, Google late last week, I guess, announced better. I'm thinking of this as OneDrive, but it's really better integration with the Microsoft 365 web app, which is the thing you get when you go to office.com, right? Mm-hmm. And these are those web versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint I was just talking about. They do some work on the Chrome OS end that when you install that web app, you go through a little wizard and it kind of connects everything up. And it allows you to, among other things, access your OneDrive folders from the Files app in Chrome OS, right? So it kind of feels a little native. And you can choose when you open a file which application you want to open it. It could be like Google Docs, or it could be Microsoft Word in the web, right? There's no offline capability. There's no sync. There's no, that's not true. You could actually, I think you can make, not 100% sure, but I believe you can make OneDrive files available offline, but there's no broad sync capability. But you can choose, and it will open in the Word or whatever web app. You have to be online, right? Because they don't support offline. maybe the feature I just talked about on the Microsoft end, and this thing will someday combine to make the Office web apps, as I refuse to not call them, usable offline on a Chromebook, which would be a whole brave new world, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't explain it. I used it though. It works good. It's a goofy handoff though, because if you have a like I say, a Word document on your local disk on the Chromebook, or it's in Google Drive, which you can access through the Chromebook in the Files app, and you open it and you say, I want this to open in Word, it will save a copy to OneDrive, because that's the only way that Word for Web works, which explains what I said earlier.
They're sort of doing sync between the
it's not even sync. It's like, I don't think they're syncing. I think it just copies it. Like it's a one-way copy. Yeah. Because if you edit that document, you're not getting the edits back to the original.
Which that's problematic, right? If you don't make that clear to someone and they're used to working in Google Drive, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I made these edits. Where are they?
And by the way, further problematic, and anyone who's used OneDrive has run into this at one point or another. That thing saves to the root of your OneDrive. You can't change it. Like there's no. It's not Google's fault. It's just the way this stuff works. Like it's kind of goofy. So just like we used to have crap in our C drive, like the root of C, now we have that stuff in the root of OneDrive. And it's like, we all have that. Like document one, like everyone, this happens to everybody. Like if you ever like stoop to using the Office web apps, you run into this problem. It's kind of strange. I mean, you can from there change the location. It's just a little ponderous.
Yeah, but the next time you do it, it's going to put it back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I know you could, if you open this thing in Word for Web, as I think of it, you can click on it and then from there put it in a different location. But Google can't do anything but copy it to the root. There's no version of a dialogue or something, or setting a default path or whatever. Silly,
I mean, the joke, of course, is only old people care about the hierarchy of files, right? The young people are just like, store it. I'll search. No,
I know. This is how the iPad has ruined the earth. This is just.
You can't even look at files.
But Google was firmly there too, right?
Yeah.
Gmail did this.
No, I had, I guess this is my old man moment. No,
in my day, we organized our files.
That's right. In my day, I did this.
There was a hierarchy.
I don't edit files. I organize files. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I know. I know.
So I could find them again. Right. You don't use search. Search doesn't work. Okay.
Well, I will say, Google proved with Gmail in a way that the search can work, and I don't have enough experience on the Google Docs side, but I just
leave everything in a heap
there.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Just
in my experience with Google Docs working with certain companies, unless you send me the link, I cannot find the file because I have a hierarchical nature that goes looking for stuff.
Yeah, we're dinosaurs. We're going to die out eventually. Yeah. No one's going to care anymore.
You know what? The asteroid can't come soon enough, honestly.
I think that's. I agree with you. This just came up today. So, as part of the US v. Google antitrust case, they've released some evidence publicly, and one of them is an email that Kevin Scott said. It might not be the first email. I mean, based on some wording, it might not be the very first. But
this is the pitch email. I heard about this more than a year ago.
It's fascinating. It is. I don't know how big it is because most of it's redacted. But from a sort of a volume perspective, it's like 80% redacted. So there's not a lot of meat there.
It's mostly about Guthrie's strategy for the cloud.
Yeah. But the central premise here is that Kevin Scott he wrote this to Bill Gates and Satya Nadella, and then Satya Nadella forwarded it to Amy Hood. But the basic premise is, I didn't think this was a threat. I didn't think this was a threat. Oh God, this is a threat. and we are way behind Google when it comes to these language models, and it's a huge problem. And it lit enough of a fire that obviously $13 billion happened, and now there's a huge partnership.
This is the email that led to the billion.
This is his version of an internet tidal wave memo.
Totally, or the secure computing.
Yeah, I can't wait.
The equivalent.
Yeah, someday we're going to see the whole thing, but even the small bit we get to see today, it's very clear. And Satya Nadella,
it's interesting to think that it was originally Google Brain that got OpenAI created, right? There was a concern about what was happening with Susquehanna and Hinton and those folks that had all been acquired by Google in 2013, that all the stuff was going to happen behind closed doors. That was the push to create OpenAI, which was Thiel and Musk and a bunch of other tech billionaires. who promptly did nothing with it. They just coaxed a bunch of that talent out of Google and into another entity that was underfunded. And then Elon tried to take it over at one point and got.
Yeah, at 2 points, as it turns out. But yes.
Yeah. And then, And so there they are struggling with money, and stuff starts to work just at that same point. And, I wonder if Scott didn't write it this way because OpenAI being strapped for cash was not a compelling threat, but Google taking advantage of OpenAI was.
Oh my God, that would have been the end, right? I think this was the nuclear option. We don't do this, we're dead.
Yeah.
And there's from the outside, we often talk about how fast AI moves, right? We don't maybe think about it from the perspective of internally at Microsoft. They could see that they were like 6 months behind Google on this AI model stuff. And we could do the work, but the problem is in 6 months, now they're 18 months ahead. We catch up to where they were, and now they're even further ahead. And that's the nature of AI.
And that rates, we're now running into an issue where there's simply no more data.
That's true.
So, the exponential function is kind of halted by, you consumed everything.
Yep.
But and that's a good thing, right? Like in some ways, it's like now you have to, we're describing all the things.
Now let's make it better.
Yeah. And M365, that whole grounding model, that's about, hey, how about you don't hallucinate? Right. How about you only use high confidence data, right? That's, in the end, this is a probabilistic engine. So, unless you're scoring in the top 10 percentile, 90% or better, to say you don't know. Right. And that turns out is a pretty good answer for in a lot of cases. It is just kind of an advanced search engine. It's just that by default, you hit the I'm lucky button each time and hope for the best.
I think, there's certain things that generate a lot of books, in our industry, like the early history of the industry with Apple and Microsoft. The Microsoft antitrust stuff was a huge thing for a while. Apple's rise to fame and fortune under Steve Jobs, obviously a big deal. But this stuff, I think, this is going to be the subject of so many huge case studies and books. I can't wait to hear the full story, but I think
the real question is how much of that $1 billion was cash and how much of it was Azure credit.
Yep. Well, they needed both.
Which is, that's the hilarious part. So I gave it to you, but then you just paid it back to us.
Well, that's the thing. So Satya Nadella writes 7 words, basically, or 15 words to Amy Hood. And basically what it amounts to is, I want us to do this. Yeah. And the problem is we don't see what he wants us to do because that part's redacted. That's the strategy part. Yeah. So it's not clear
how much of it is Azure credit,
Yeah, but it was, we got to do something with this company, like we have to.
And this gets back to Guthrie's strategy, which was find workloads for the cloud, right? Like that. We've invested in all this stuff. We have to put this to work. Migrating our existing customers is only going to go so far, and they could always migrate back, right? See repatriation, make us things that need cloud.
Yeah, right. God, it's not just Microsoft, but I just know more about the Microsoft stuff. Obviously, these corporate strategies. I'm not saying anything
that's secret. This is what everybody's been doing in the tech giant world.
Well, we have to do this, but we also have to not kill our bread and butter. It's one of those weird.
And that's the advantage of bringing new products, right? That is staying in the blue ocean while
I should have put this in. The Walking Cat on Twitter has published a series of internal talks that. Happened at the Microsoft campus from, I'm losing my brain. The former chief scientist of Microsoft after Bill Gates was that guy from Lotus and Groove. Ray Ozzie, thank you. Yeah. Now, this is one of the most plain-spoken, smartest, wonderful human beings that's ever existed, and he talks a lot about the creation of Azure, which he played a major role in, and all this other stuff. And one of the, and a lot of internal interactions, it's fascinating, but one of the conversations involved, they were talking about, like, we have to build the web stuff. It was the web app thing I was just mentioning, and this has to happen. Like, we're doing this. And Bill Gates was like, yeah, we're not doing this. This is going to, our revenue, we look at where the money comes from right now. And Bill Gates was not running the company. Ballmer was at the time, but major role, right? They were like, yeah, no, this is all revenue for us. We can't hurt that revenue stream. And so the guy, I don't think it was Jeff Rakes, but I don't know why I have Jeff Rakes in my brain, but whoever's running Office, whatever Office became at the time, him and Ray Ozzie both decided between themselves privately that, let's just proceed with the understanding is probably going to happen in the future, and we'll do what they say now. But like, this is they're not going to be right forever, And that kind of thinking doesn't happen a lot. And, things often get constrained because of competitive, necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And Microsoft could have, there's no reason why Microsoft didn't transition fully to the web, except they're protecting a cash cow.
Well, and to be clear, this isn't even Gates. At that point, Gates is mostly in Africa. This is Ballmer.
Yeah, no, but he mentioned specifically it was Ballmer and Gates. Like it was the two of them who kind of tag teamed in this and were like, no, like you're not doing this.
Yeah,
like Ballmer was the CEO at the time. Yes, that's true.
And
Anyway.
What you didn't see was any chime in from Gates on the email from Kevin Scott.
Yeah, probably because that would have happened through the dark web. Sorry, I'm on Jeffrey Epstein's island right now. I'll get back to you on Monday. I mean, there's a whole kind of wormy thing going on there, which we don't want to address too much. But yeah, but he was when Satya Nadella became CEO, which was 5 years prior to this.
Yeah, 2014.
Bill Gates was known. He was going to be an advisor to the CEO, that kind of stuff. So he was probably CC'd on a lot of things that went, that went to Satya, especially strategy stuff.
And there was certainly a period there where product teams were back to quote unquote going before Bill.
Yeah.
Right. That Bill was back to reviewing product, which I thought he was extraordinary at.
Right.
Except for all the other stuff.
The problem with him, at least 2 times I can think of, Microsoft has explicitly said that he is no longer involved in anything.
Yes.
And he was, and yikes. So I don't know. I mean,
an argument, arguably at this point, he's not involved at all.
I would hope so, but you know what? I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're right.
I do know. I know of various advisors.
Yeah.
Are still, and names you probably recognize that are no longer marquee names at Microsoft. They're just involved.
Okay. Anyway, this is fascinating.
I hope more of it does come out.
Yeah, I do too. I can't wait.
These will be great stories. It is an extraordinary moment, and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, what's important about this is that Kevin Scott found a way to make it urgent.
Yep. And we'll never know what that way was. Well, I mean, we don't know.
It was the Google threat.
One day we will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he just saw how, he steps through the 3 stages he went through where in the beginning he was like, yeah, this is no big deal. We can do this easily. Mm-hmm. And the second one was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And the third one was like, oh, crap. This is the problem. Like, we actually have to,
we need to jump ahead, and we don't do it now. It's only
catching up is going to be hard. Like, we can do it, but it's going to be really hard.
And I think, again, it's like, this is how you get $1 billion.
Yep. Billions of dollars. Yeah.
Well, initially,
he was even saying, he said, look, we have teams in various parts of the company that are doing great work, but they're small, and we're going to throw money at them for sure. But
actually, the fact that is dated for 2019. I mean, was that there? I guess that was the original investment. Yeah, that is the original investment, because it was because after that they start getting results, right? In 2019, they're still at GPT-2, and they're trying to build GPT-3. They don't have the resources.
Oh, if you go and look at the models that he was so scared of, I think today they would look like they're
ridiculous. Yeah, they're silly, but
this Eliza is really good.
Yeah. It's he was he cited specifically the auto response stuff in Gmail. He said,
but it happens so quickly. Good. I mean, that email's in 2019, and ChatGPT is November of 22.
Yeah, it was pretty prescient, even though you and I might have laughed at the time.
And at that point, it was $1 billion, then it was $2 billion, and then it was $10 billion in 23.
Right. Yep. Yeah, they kept getting results. I mean,
Well, and I remember Rusinovich doing the press piece for the original GPT-3 before ChatGPT, because he quote unquote built the 5th largest supercomputer in the world,
he was approaching
inside
it from
of Azure data centers.
I'm an Azure guy. We need it. This is a great example of how well we scale, et cetera.
Well, and there was a part of this where it felt to me like, hey, you just spent $2 billion. You should at least get some PR from it.
Yeah.
Because at that time, none of us really thought this was going to amount to anything. It was AI experiments.
They clearly had much bigger aims than that. But
and we are talking about a company that was bringing in, even at that point, 40 to 50 a quarter. Like $2 billion is just not that big of a deal. That's only one B-1 bomber, for crying out loud.
Okay. Speaking of OpenAI, I guess now they're calling this feature memory. And the idea is that if you have to pay to get this, you have to be a ChatGPT Plus subscriber. But if you pay, you can enable a feature called memory. And then the chatbot will actually remember things that you said, like my wife does, and then use it against you. or rather use it as sort of context, right? So I would hope and assume that, I don't know. If I generate images, for example, which I don't use ChatGPT for, I guess you wouldn't anyway use DALL-E, but whatever it might be, it would remember the types of things I like and then maybe push it down that path, etc.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just save the prefixing of your prompts for what I like, right? I just really am appalled by the anthropomorphization, right? It's like, don't call this memory. Come on.
They really like to use these terms. I mean, this is firmly embedded in the whole.
It's like
you're fighting a losing battle, Richard. I mean, I completely agree with you, but it's too late.
But there's another way to look at this, which is like, regulate me, please. Like the more you use this frightening language, the more you're asking politicians to freak out.
Make sure every one of the data center, every rack in the data center actually has a human face on it that animates as it does things,
Yes.
Sometimes just make it as scary as you can.
Sometimes it frowns. And sometimes the eyes all turn red.
Yeah, if it makes a mistake, it gets upset with itself and then just hits itself in the head repeatedly,
Stupid.
No, we're not torn. It's fine. It's fine. Well, he'll get fed tonight. It'll be fine. It's a slop. He likes it. So Amazon, I think back in November, had announced something called Q, which stands for question, or Q, the guy from Star Trek, whatever, you pick your choice. They use
not
both.
Quantum.
Well, it might be maybe it's not quantum computing based or anything, but whatever. At the time this was promoted, it was a preview and it was for enterprises, and now it is generally available for enterprises and for developers, which is kind of an interesting pivot. So they have the two different offerings, Q for business, Q for, or actually just Q business and Q developer. That's fine. And then there's a preview of something called Amazon Q apps, which is not as exciting as it sounds, but basically you're creating GPTs. So it's like what all the other ones do. You create custom GPTs.
So an Amazon Q is Copilot.
Yes.
All right. There you go.
Yes, it is. Yep.
About time they had a brand out there,
Yeah.
Just one that's even together or more opaque, because AI was too long. So Q.
Yes. And their direct to enterprise services tend to do great. I'm sure you could name 17 of them. Nope, no one can. I don't know.
Well,
so whatever.
There's the Q reference from Star Trek, and doesn't he try to kill all of civilization? So. Although
Cortana, the same thing, right?
He tried to save the Federation from the Borg. So, there's a good Microsoft reference for you. That's why they're Q, to save you from the Borg.
I'm hoping either one of you can explain this one to me, because I read this 3 times. I looked at the demo, so I have no idea what this thing is. So GitHub, of course, the original Copilot, they have different SKUs, different the business offerings, etc. They announced something. It's a technical preview called Copilot Workspace, which is I'm going to call it a chatbot-based Copilot style environment. It runs right in the GitHub website. There's it's not Visual Studio Code. It's nothing like that. You basically go up to a repository, you open a window, like a chat window, and you talk to it. And what it can do is look at the issues, and it can look at the check-ins, and it can find problems. And I don't know what I have no idea what I every once in a while really struggle with something, and in the sense that I feel like I'm kind of getting AI. This one I'm having a lot of trouble with. I don't quite understand what's happening here.
It's an alternative. They're experimenting with an alternative approach to doing software development, a chat-based approach to software development.
Yep.
Which I've been arguing that there ought to be a chat window in Visual Studio.
Yeah. I'm sure there will be, by the way.
Well, I would hope.
Sure
But the main thing being to get away from the 747 cockpit effect, right? It's like, hey, we got everything you want to do in Studio is there. You just can't find it, right? It's like your own.
Well, GitHub has its own little density. Even for people who are developers, I think GitHub can be confusing.
Oh, that's a command line thing.
Yeah. And whatever it's worth, I use GitHub every day, but I don't want to oversell that, because I'm not very good at it.
I would also argue that a novice developer getting into development today is very hard. The tools are not well suited for it.
Yeah.
It's very challenging to get started.
They talk about using this to kind of expand like or lower the barrier of entry for people who can build software. Obviously, in this first iteration, it's not doing that at all. I think just signing into GitHub could be troubling for some people, but I mean, like, this is
coding
this
for
is not
people who hate to code.
It's not
I like to
AOL.com is all
code.
I'm
You
saying.
like to code. We want to code.
Yeah.
Yes. But I do agree. In other words,
But there are people who don't want to. I understand.
Well, or there are just some tasks that they're just boilerplate or onerous or whatever. Like I once converted a giant, no, I'm forgetting the details now. I think it was a giant Charles Petzold C# printing thing for probably WinForms to Visual Basic one time.
Yeah,
it took forever.
Probably C++, actually.
No, it was actually that direction. And the reason I know that now, it was that direction, because the reason I know this is I later discovered after I completed it that someone had actually converted his book and made a VB version of it. So I got the book used and I flipped through and I looked at it. I compared it to what I did and I was like, oh, yeah, pretty good. Like I did it, right? But that's the type of task which is like thankless and takes forever. Where I would like to say to something like this, I want this, but in VB. That would be an awesome use. Not that VB
is. That is something that Copilot does pretty well, right? When it comes to language translation. But I would argue the one thing GitHub hasn't had is a dev environment.
So when I saw this headline, I thought that's what this was going to be. Yet another Visual Studio based.
Right? They had Adam.
Or Visual Studio Code based. Yeah,
right,
editor.
Not a dev environment.
And that is not what this is.
Well, I mean, they call it a dev environment.
I know they do, which is, I think, is part of the confusion.
What is is a dev environment an IDE? What is a dev environment?
That's the thing. This is not an IDE.
I mean, what does it do?
This is a chat bot that lives for now in the GitHub website. I don't think you could summon it. In fact, I'm just going to say I'm fairly positive you cannot summon it from the GitHub command line. Like this is not that thing. But you sign into GitHub on the web. You will have probably like a team project with different people working on it. Maybe you're a non-developer or something. Someone's stuck on something. There's an issue, and you can look at this issue and say, "Let's fix this," and it will kind of go through and work with you on it and provide you with steps to take, and you can verify that it works, et cetera, before applying it. You can do, you can pull your own version down, work on that locally or wherever in your own repository. And then
it's like a workflow manager, which is, when you think about what Visual Studio actually is, on one hand, it is an editor, an integrated debugger and so forth. But at the same time, it's also a project management tool, right? It does literally call things projects.
Exactly.
And deals with all of those parts. This feels like the project piece pulled out on its own with a chatbot interface on it.
It's interesting, though, that they did this at the GitHub level and not at the, I guess I'd call it editor level. Like that, instead of making an interface for Visual Studio Code and or Visual Studio, I mean, it's literally on the website for GitHub. I
would also mention that while Thomas Demke is the CEO of the wholly owned subsidiary known as GitHub, his direct report is Julia Lucen, who runs DevDiv, and that's Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code,
right?
And .NET and everything else. So they, in theory, are working together. Like there's a coordination.
I'm sure they are.
You would hope.
I'm sure they are.
And so maybe this was the best place to put this, because I've certainly been an advocate for Studio should be good for novice developers because it's got everything already included. It's just too complicated to use, and maybe a chat interface would simplify.
You're a light switch fan, aren't you?
Well, I had admiration for that. I also am not afraid of Power Platform because in the end, my job's not to write code. It's to bring solutions to customers. So whatever tools I need to use to do that. So maybe this is the best way to present a new way to pursue solving problems for customers using software.
Okay. I mean, I in a team that includes developers and non-developers, maybe this will become an approachable way for a non-developer to contribute and say, look, I did some grunt work with the AI thing, and you can
if you look at GitHub's goal is to make sure that everything becomes an issue inside of GitHub, having non-developers willing to use it because they're living in the workspace and feeding that issue matrix does give us a common repository. Like you think about what GitHub's actually afraid of in this world.
Notion.
It's the Atlassians of this world.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And so
I kind of like the idea that everything is in some ways a GitHub issue. I could live my life like that.
No, and there's lots of folks that do, right? This is where you maintain your recipes. I've seen people write books through GitHub.
I do. I write my two most recent books are over 1,000 pages each, and they're all in GitHub.
And so the idea that they're essentially building tooling to move down this path, like it'd be interesting to spend time with this workspace and not go to anything code related. Just manipulate text files.
All right. I still don't get it, but you know what? Life is too short, so I'm going to move on. And then Leo mentioned this earlier, so just real quickly. Apple had talked to OpenAI about bringing their stuff to the iPhone. They moved on to Google, and apparently they're talking to OpenAI again. So I don't know what that means. No one does, right? So we'll see. We're kind of bearing down on developer show season, though, and
yeah, the fact that they're still in conversation.
I know.
I mean, they go last, but it's pretty late to still be trying to make a deal.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do both.
Well, I know I'm thinking the same thing, and both, and maybe more, right?
More, right?
I guess they've also talked to Anthropic. I mean,
Mr.
One thing it's already pretty obvious right now, and it will change all the time. But for right now, these models, some of them are really good at this. This one's really good at this. They might be able to cherry pick this and have it make some sense. I don't know. We'll see. But
yeah. But it's always a good idea when you're trying to negotiate terms to have alternative options.
Yes. Well, that's it. So that's the other option. What this could just be a ploy to make a better deal with Google, right?
Yeah.
Like Google search, there was no competition to speak of, right? With the AI stuff, there's competition. So maybe they get a better end of the stick here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it may also be they're just saying, who are you who's going to pay us more money?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like that. That's
we are prepared to
the form it would
entertain
take.
your offer.
Yes.
Which of you can pay more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Just kiss the ring, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I would argue OpenAI hasn't got the money, but Google sure as heck does.
Yeah. I'm curious. Microsoft has never entered into this conversation. It doesn't mean that they're not in the running somewhere. But
well, there's another angle on this, which is OpenAI feeling a little too bound to Microsoft and saying, "Hey, we have alternatives too."
Oh yes. Yep. But why not play those two off each other? Apple.
Who knows if they aren't, right?
As you mentioned, developer season is coming. Is Build going to have a keynote we should stream?
It is going to have a keynote you should that you
is
could
it
stream.
Private?
No. This is going to be public.
Is this May 20th?
Yeah, 21st.
20th, I think, is the day, the Monday of whatever that week is, or sorry, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
So I'll tell you what. Next week, ask me that question again.
Would you find out? Yeah, because we're trying to decide.
I'll have a better answer for you.
What we should do. Yeah, May 21st, I think, is what they said, and it would push our shows back on Tuesday. But if it's worth covering, we'll cover it.
Let's talk next week.
We'll talk next week.
Yeah.
You're watching Windows Weekly, you winners and dozers. This is Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell's lair, and they are layering it. We'll have more in just a moment.
Sorry.
Actually, this would be a good time to do the Xbox segment. Mr. Thurrott, I throw it to you.
Yeah, we have a pretty good Xbox segment today. There's a lot going on in some ways, and then not so much in others, I guess.
Blizzard games.
Yeah.
Blizzard games.
Yeah. So
don't egg him on. That's mean.
Blizzard games?
I'm getting the Twitch. I've lost all track of anything I was thinking of. So Microsoft announced an
totally
Xbox
derailed him.
Well done, Richard. Well done.
You have no idea how much this bothers me.
2 minutes in the box feels shame.
Yeah. I think you got a couple of teeth on that one. Xbox Games Showcase is coming on June 9. This will feature games from Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, and Xbox Game Studios. Here we go. Okay. So it's only been 9 months. Yes. So anyway, that's fine. Okay. They also vaguely reference another event, which is the next installment of a beloved franchise. And everyone is, of course, guessing that it's Call of Duty. And I guess this wasn't, I guess this was pretty obvious to everyone, but I further guessed that it had to be Call of Duty because they have redacted things on it. I'm sorry, Black Ops, because there are redacted elements of the graphic. And that's a big part of the whole Black Ops thing, right? It's that whole Cold War, or started in the Cold War, redacted document thing. So actually, as it turns out, I guess they've been talking, or it's been known for a while that the next game will be a Black Ops game. So on June 9, we're going to learn about that. So that's great. And then we get into Richard's point. We got the first couple of, or the first ship of games to Game Pass. There are only 4 in the beginning of May. None of them are Activision Blizzard. And I don't have a problem with that. That you do it on your own schedule, Microsoft. I don't care. You don't even have to tell me. Just don't even worry about it. I don't care. Except that I care a lot. And, nothing dramatic here. One of them is the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, which is, I think, it's this more recent trilogy of Tomb Raider games. So they're all on Game Pass, I think, now, or they will be soon, as of, I think, tomorrow as we record this. And hasn't everyone in the planet played these games already? I don't know. Seriously, do you have a studio that has no games except for one on Game Pass that maybe you could plumb a little bit? I don't know. Maybe we're waiting for June on that. Could I pause my Xbox Game Pass subscription so I don't pay for it until this I don't know. I guess not. If you don't care as much for the AAA stuff as I do, Microsoft has always been, long been heavily involved in the indie part of the gaming market as well. And they just held an ID Xbox Digital Showcase for a bunch of games that are coming across the platform this year: Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Windows PC, and Game Pass. Bunch of fun looking stuff there. So that's good. That actually, honestly, that looks stronger than the Game Pass stuff. So that's good. Am I missing something here? No, I guess not. And then, not that I have an attitude about it or anything, but back in February, Microsoft announced they were bringing 4 Xbox games cross-platform. With the release of Sea of Thieves the other day, they now have delivered all 4 of them. So apparently they can deliver Xbox games to other platforms really fast, but bringing their own games to Xbox Game Pass a little harder. I'm sure there's a reason for that.
Not that you're better.
I'm okay. So, but yeah, Sea of Thieves I don't play this game, but this is a great example of when Microsoft gets it right with a game. Like this thing has had 40 million gamers over the years, all kinds of extra content. Now it's cross-platform. They're really extending the life of this thing. I think this is smart. So it's fun. It's great, right? I mean, for the same reason that being able to play against that bigger audience of people in Call of Duty or whatever other game is a great benefit, so is playing with them cross-platform in this game as well. So that's good. I think we talked a little bit about the Fallout TV series last week. Yeah. So they have been doing next-gen updates for some of these games. And Fallout 4 is now available on Xbox Series X and S and I think PlayStation 5. I've never played any of these games, and
really
not even.
I know,
not even 76. Not even.
I know. I'm confused by this because I love the whole post-apocalyptic thing, and I can't explain it. But I haven't. Anyway, so these games are now they're 4K, 60 frames a second, blah blah blah, et cetera. So, good. I love this. I love taking classic games that everyone loves and then making them more viable on modern hardware. It's awesome. So this is all good.
I mean, I would argue that 3 was the great game that got everybody hooked on Fallout.
What was the 3 scenario? Where did 3 take place?
Washington, D.C.
Okay.
But it was very much the classic, leave the vault storyline.
Yeah.
And explore the world and find out.
Maybe I should take a look at it.
The other side of those. Then you get into Vegas, and Vegas, they're experimenting as gamers with storylines that are not compatible. So it gives you multiple playthroughs because you make a commitment on one path, you cannot go back to the other path.
Yep. Which was the one that was like the Appalachia? Is that 76 or what was?
No,
76 I don't know the games.
Is it Vegas?
One of them's Boston, I know. And then one of them,
maybe that was 76.
I think it's 70.
I think 76 is the one to play. I think.
But my problem with the 76 one is that they were trying desperately to make an MMO out of it, and so they subverted the game to try and make the
Well, it has building and there's other people in there, and apparently, I just read an article that said there's, it had a rocky start, but the people who stuck with it are actually pretty cool, and they help you out as a newbie. It looks kind of, and that's
fun.
Call of Duty is exactly
Boston
the same.
one is
if you don't know what you're doing, people are really nice to you.
Boston.
I don't,
Yeah.
It's just like Boston. People are super nice to you. It's great.
So you think he should play 4? He should play 4 because he's from Boston.
I mean, I think 3 is the purest manifestation of the genre. Because it is just 4's got some interesting twists in it. I mean, they certainly play up the Boston angle and this Commonwealth angle. There's a lot more interaction with larger entities. That you get a sense of a bigger world that's trying to recover after the apocalypse. And it plays pretty well. I'm not a fan of 76 just because they subverted the storytelling. to try and make an MMO.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the picture quality on 3 though up to snuff?
Well, and I think that's the question: is have they upscaled that one up well enough?
Right. I'm not sure which ones they've done. I know they've done at least a few. I would think
just an ad. I think. Oh, here we go. Here's the game. Yeah.
And this is 4.
This is 3.
Well, and this now we get into one of the things that Bethesda was magic about, which is they allowed these communities to emerge. That it was the fans that upscaled the graphics. in Fallout 3, and you installed
that happened
mods.
with Half-Life. They did that great Black Mesa convert.
Exactly.
Became official, right?
The art of tinkering with Fallout 3 at this point is going on to Nexus Mods and pulling together a set of mods to make the game look the way you want.
I have to say, this looks more like the TV show's plot than
it's interesting.
Ones.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be appealing. I know Fallout gameplay has gone up dramatically because of the TV show, right? People are interested in this.
Yeah.
So it's a good timing for them.
Well, they're all on Xbox, aren't they? Are they all on Xbox? I think they are,
yeah.
And Steam.
And PlayStation 5, yeah.
PlayStation, PS5.
And PC.
And
that's
PC.
That's where the mod.
Was that still around as a gaming platform?
Yeah,
listen, some of us here in the Master Race are perfectly comfortable with, not just missing out on what a game can be.
All right, that's the Xbox news across the nation. Now let us pause, and when we come back, the back of the book with Paul's tips and picks, and we have some nice brownish liquor to talk about.
Oh, it's brownish.
It's brownish.
It's got that lovely amber color that you like.
Yes. But first, I want to do a little plug for the club. I know a lot of you listening are in the club, and I know what a great group it is because we had that open house a couple of weeks ago. Lovely group of people came by. I go into the Discord, all the time, every day, and there's just wonderful conversations happening in there. Club Twit is more than just supporting the network. I mean, it really does support the network. Your $7 a month really makes a difference to our bottom line. We can't go on without it, to be honest. But I think there's a lot of benefit to you, too. Sure, you get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get video of Paul's Hands on Windows, Micah's Hands on Mac, the Untitled Linux Show, the Home Theater Geek Show. You get special events like the book club coming up next week. We're going to all get together at the Laporte House, share some brisket, and watch Fritz Lang's classic Metropolis. And you can watch along with us. Yeah. So there's a lot of things. But I think what's great about the club mostly is the people in it, our members. And I'd like to invite you personally to become one. $7 a month, not much. It really makes a difference in the growth of our network, the survival of our network. And I think there are lots of benefits to you. twit.tv/clubtwit if you are not yet a member. In the words of, is that Ryan Gosling? No, I don't know who that is. It'd be rude not to join. That's the word. Who is that? I don't know. It's what Ryan Gosling's going to look like someday. All right. Paul Thurrott starts us off the back of the book.
Kenobi, for all I know.
It could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So I spent about 5 weeks with a MacBook Air. I think this triggered a little bit of angst, but I don't know why. Because
too much?
I did like it quite a bit. But the truth is I've owned at least one Mac for 25 years. I mean, I use Macs all the time. But mostly for testing, right? I do a lot of parallel stuff and, just to make sure I know where things are at, et cetera. But I went out and used this thing a lot. And, I uncovered like a million inconsistencies in the UI. It's weird, but I did like it quite a bit. And there's a kind of a fit and finish thing there I'd like to see on Windows. But it was interesting to me because I tried very hard just to do it the Apple way and not, I didn't want to install third-party utilities to make it a little bit more like Windows or remap the keys to make it a little bit more like Windows. Although I can't tell you how many times I sit down at a Windows PC now and hit Alt-C for, instead of Control-C because that's where the command key is on the Mac. And it's like, seriously. But anyway, the differences can be maddening, but I don't think many people go back and forth. I think people just switch or don't switch or whatever, but it's okay. But I did finally in the end break down, and after I published my review, I installed a couple of those utilities, and thank God I can now actually see every window. Nice. When I try to switch between things, or And I did a couple of things, but I eventually, of course, went back to Parallels. And I don't know, I guess not many people do this, but they have I think it's called coherency or coherency, whatever that mode is, where you can run individual Windows apps alongside Mac apps. And I got to tell you, for me, because I know this sounds goofy, but I use these apps like Paint is a great example, which is built into Windows, but it's so efficient. And I had a real trouble trying to find an efficient. I never found one like an efficient bitmap editor for the Mac. I know there are things like
Acorn,
Pinta, and
there's quite a few.
Someday,
Paint and talk to me.
There are quite a few.
Talk to me, and I can help.
No, but the issue is
growing pains.
They're not keyboard friendly. And I know you can do. I know people keep telling me, Paul, you can map.
Maybe not. The Mac isn't really a
keyboard
driven device.
No, it's not. It's I have a great example in there of the 17 steps I have to do to resize and rescale an image on the Mac, and then the 3 seconds it takes me to do it on Windows. Like there's a real stumbling block there. So it was if you were worried about how much I love this thing, I will just say the good news is in the end I needed to put Windows on it for it to be whole. So it really, now it's awesome. It's even better, but it's kind of goofy. Like Windows is a feature. And then I guess we did talk about Fallout, so I don't have to mention that again, other than say, seriously, watch the show. It's fantastic. Super adult, super violent, but
super violent. I'm actually a little turned off.
Awesome. My wife was like, after 2 episodes, she's like, we're not watching this, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, we're watching. I was like, I'll watch it by myself if you want, but
I think we saw the third. What's the one where they? I can't even.
If you're going to say like a head exploding, I'm going to say which one, because there were a couple of those.
There's one where
I know it comes down and grab. Yeah. So the violence is gruesome, but here's the thing. I'm not saying violence is okay or anything like that, but there's a goofy, happy humor to it that offsets that, I think, nicely, and like it's not as grueling as like the Game of Thrones was hard to get through because it was just so unremittingly terrible.
It's the Pulp Fiction of video games.
Yeah, it's fun. There's a fun factor to it. Like it's fun. Yeah. Like it's like those perky, happy people that like they're all like that. Honestly, to some degree, it's kind of fun. They created a really neat world. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a real world, but it's interesting. It's cool. I think it's cool. Yeah. Not to beat it to death. Yeah. And then Arc, or the browser company, has announced the 1.0 release of Arc browser for Windows. So it's public now. There's no wait list. I've been using this thing straight through. I'm not noticing any huge change here, but Arc Sync works across. They also added Arc Sync to the iPhone app, which is called something else, but whatever. And yeah, I like it. I feel like the Windows
is pretty close parity to them.
I think it's getting there.
Mac one.
It's not quite, but it's closer than it was. Yeah. Yep.
It's certainly usable. I like it.
Yeah. And this is just tangentially in a way, Microsoft open sourced something called MS-DOS 4.0. I say it that way because they actually went from like 3.3 to 5 for like 99% of the planet, and no one ever saw a 4 and was confused by this. And I guess there was some special markets they needed to have something in the interim, and it's kind of a weird crossbreed thing that has some code in it that didn't exist in DOS really ever anywhere else. There's some weirdness to it, but there's a great Scott Hanselman story. In fact, I saw Scott on Facebook like last month asking anyone if they had 5.25-inch floppy drives for a project. This is what it was. He was trying to and Ray Ozzie was involved. He helped recover some of these disks, and they partnered with IBM, getting the team back together. And they open sourced this thing, and it joins a couple of other older versions of MS-DOS that they had also previously open sourced. I think it's fun, so I don't know why you would run this, but
it's becoming a strategy to preserve technology.
I love
open source.
Yep, and I'm on board with this
because you don't have to spend anything on it anymore. It doesn't cost much to be up there. Those who care about it have access to it. Like, it's just an interesting strategy to say, hey, let's just open source this, and not as a dumping ground, but as a preservation technique.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's cool. Yeah. So this is DOS 4 is a weird. Halfway between, it was something, it was going to be like not multi-threaded, maybe it was multi-threaded DOS or whatever.
It was multi-OS. It was being, you remember Desk View? Like it was
it was going to be something like that.
I did this all the time where I'd run two instances of a DOS window, essentially split in the screen for certain hacky things that I was doing. It was useful to have both. And so, we used desk view stuff, and they were trying to incorporate that into DOS. It happened better in 5, but in 4 was.
And then, of course, OS2 was happening too. So, I don't remember the exact release schedule there.
There was a GUI involved in that, and that was gross.
Well, eventually, you're right. But the first release of OS2 was actually just a command line, right? So it was like the 1 point whatever version that added presentation manager. But Yeah. Oh, 2.0. Okay. So anyway, it's a neat little slice of history that no one, including myself, literally no one knows anything about. So, cool.
Yeah. Back when a CPU had 63 instructions.
Yeah. You could actually learn the whole thing.
Still exists somewhere inside of that Intel chip you're using today.
Which is good and bad, right? Can we agree? There's pros and cons.
This is legacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Run his radio time, Mr. Richard Campbell. What's up?
Back in March at the Fabric Conference, I got a chance to grab a show. This was one with Mausma Zahid and Bob Ward. Bob's one of my regulars. He's one of the SQL Server dudes who's everywhere. Mausma I met for the very first time. Just a stunningly brilliant mind. Like, you just had that moment after you've talked for a while. It's like, wow, you think differently than me. And she's firmly in the machine learning space. And one of her responsibilities for the SQL team is to bring LLMs into SQL Server in various capacities. So we sort of went through the various views that she had on incorporation and how it's going to appear in SQL Server. And this sort of broke down into 3 categories. Essentially, the first was SQL Server is that Swiss Army knife data store. So they are adding, for example, vector data types to do vector storage for building machine learning models. So that's one aspect of it, and that helps you to be able to build machine learning elsewhere. Where you're going to put that data, you could set up a separate vector database, or hey, you're already paying for a SQL license, and here's the data stores to make that work for you. So good combination there. Then there was the I'm trying to navigate around the features of SQL Server as a DBA. And so having essentially a chat interface that helps you with diagnostics or understanding a query plan or trying to figure out how to scale properly or partition a table. All of those are emerging as features that a large language model understands about your SQL Server so they can help you write the code to optimize your SQL Server. And the one that Bob and I laughed about the most was querying the database with text. Decades ago, SQL Server had a natural language query interface that was terrible. And, for the most part, abandoned after a while because it was just so difficult to use. But yeah, that puppy's back around again, only this time it's an LLM, and then the LLMs are pretty compelling for being able to write natural language queries. So we ran through the gamut of various options, and to me, it's just another reminder of this is what's happening everywhere. Microsoft, even on a product that has its legacy going back to even pre-Windows versions, right? Those Sybase versions of SQL Server are still around. They're still a thing, and then they became, as of SQL 7 and SQL 2000, and the great late Jim Gray, and that amazing version that makes SQL Server still dominant to this day. And here we are, still adding features and still evolving and still great capability. So it was a fun conversation. Very bright people. Good time.
Very nice. I think we deserve a drink.
Oh my goodness. Well, good news is I have one. So there you go. As you were well aware, because we did a show from there, I was in Romania. And in the past, I have talked about the brandies of that part of Eastern Europe, although the last time it was Vint, which is actually from Tiraspol, which is in the semi-autonomous region of Moldova, known as Transnistria, which has a long history that I'm not going to get into because it's particularly not funny these days. Let's talk about Romania, because Romania... now you're talking about a country not a whole lot different than the size of Minnesota, although Minnesota has about 5 million people in it, and this place has about 19 million people in it. And it's a very nice place. It really is. But there's a problem when you're a very nice place in between a whole bunch of world powers.
Ask France.
Yeah, you just get, well, at least they're on the edge. That they've got an ocean backing them. The main geologic, there's two primary geological features to think about when you think about Romania. If you're not familiar with the area, it is the end of the Danube River. The Danube starts in southwestern Germany, travels through Austria, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia. It's most of the southern border of Romania and Bulgaria before diverting up towards the end when it empties into the Black Sea in an area known as the Danube Delta. And so this is the original superhighway. Like, that's how you navigate before you can build roads. And then the other big feature in the Northwest is the Carpathian Mountains, which span across a lot of Europe, but the bulk of it is in Romania. And that's also the area. So the southern area where the Danube is called Wallachia. And that has been around for long before even the name Romania was used. And the northern part is Transylvania, which for better or worse in the Western world has been subverted into Halloween fodder. And this bloody Bram Stoker's book from 1897 called Dracula. And I got to bring it up just because, look, there was a guy. His name was Vlad Dracul. So he was actually Vlad II. This is not the one. This was the second son. He was called Vlad Dracul because he was actually part of the Order of the Dragon, which he was given in. This is in the 1400s by Sigismund of Luxembourg.
Is this Vlad the Impaler?
Vlad III, his son, was the guy who ended up with the name Impaler. So this is at a time when the Ottoman Empire is pressing into Europe. This is the mid 1400s. This is 1453 is when Constantinople falls to the Ottomans, and they ultimately, that push by the Ottomans is stopped in Vienna in the Great Siege in 1529. And of course, the Ottoman Empire will persist until World War I. So, not 500 years later. So in the 1400s, for better or worse, Wallachia is sort of the front line between the Ottoman Empire and the Turks coming out of the south and Western European powers, such as they were in the 1400s. And so Vlad II makes a deal with the Ottomans to be a vassal state, to balancing off against the Saxons to the north, who are actually controlling Hungary and Transylvania. And Vlad III and his brother Radu are sent to the Ottoman Empire, which is typical. It's kind of a hostage thing. This way you're going to behave because we have your sons. But in exchange, they educate him in the modern Ottoman thinking, which is arguably is one of the reasons why Vlad becomes quite as ruthless as he actually is. And when there's some betrayals goes on and his father is killed, Vlad III is sent in to try and take control of Wallachia again. And then he ends up fighting. He loses and goes back to the Ottomans and fights back. It goes back and forth. And by 1460, he has peace and has control of Wallachia. And then the Ottomans are like, okay, well, it's time to start paying your taxes, do your homage. And he goes, no. And he has the envoys impaled. Now, previously, during his battles to get control of the land, he had successfully captured and sacked some cities or some towns in Transylvania. And he also took those people and had them impaled. It's like, you impale a whole village, they call you an impaler. One way to look at it is like, this is very cost-effective murder by the state, right? And plus, it makes a good scene. Like the one where he took out the whole village, he literally had the posts put down in the roadway and had the villagers each impaled one after the other. So you got to enter the town looking at all the dying and dead bodies. Impaler. And oddly enough, when he rebels against the Ottomans then have his younger brother Radu, which they'd had back in the time, and they send Radu in to get it back from him. And this is where the whole cruelty story really comes from, because at that point, the Ottomans are mad at him. The Saxons are mad at him. Vlad the Impaler retreats into Hungary and they imprison him for a decade. And so they become popular stories. And it happens to blend in with the fact that vampirism is a folklore of the Transylvanian mountains. So those two things go together. But it wasn't until Bram Stoker that they combined the two.
Is this why wine is red?
No, but they do make a wine called Vampire Blood there. Yeah. Not that I would drink it. And yeah. I have been in Romania a number of times, and there have been occasions when we were doing tourist things, and I have bumped into a Dracula tour where a whole lot of goth-looking people are riding together to find out this is a book. It's not real. So what has this got to do with wine? Well, almost nothing, really. But it is one of the things to realize about Romania is that a big piece of it is on the 45th parallel. This is the same line of latitude that the Rhone region of France is, the Piedmont region of Italy is. Heck, even the Willamette Valley in Oregon is near the 45th parallel. And this same region is in Wallachia in Romania. So they're a breadbasket. They grow a lot of food and they grow a lot of fruit. And it is very normal for the farmers in that area to turn a certain amount of their fruit into alcohol to stop it from spoiling, right? The original project's called Tuica. I try and get it right, the pronunciation. And well, in Tuica, if you directly translate it, literally translates as booze. And it traditionally is made with plums because plums grow like crazy in that part of the world. And that, in fact, that's why the Poles have Slivovitz and the Bulgarians have Rakia. Like it's all plum brandy, which, by the way, is typically about 20 to 30% alcohol. I actually had some while I was there, just to remind me that it's only EU requirements for spirits being 40%. There's no market or no legislation around how a 25% alcohol should work. It's too strong to be wine. It's too weak to be spirits, so it shouldn't exist. It's delicious, actually, at that point. When you make it up to 40, it's not so nice. And because your friend's uncle is making it, sometimes it's 80. And you could strip engine parts with it. Yeah, but that's the fruit stuff. But we're talking about grapes. And more importantly, we're talking about brandy, which is really you've made some wine and the wine's going to spoil, or it's not that good. And now you're going to convert it to a higher alcohol again to preserve it. And that's where we get into this term. And this is what's on the bottle, vinars. Now, vinars is a direct translation, means burnt wine, which may sound weird, except that that's really what brandy is too. The original name for brandy is brandy wine, as in also burned wine, which is you are distilling wine into a higher spirit. So brandy's the generalized name. Anywhere in the world can make a brandy. It's just distilled wine. Typically they're aged in oak barrels, but there's really no restrictions on brandy. Sometimes it's just maybe 6 months or so forth. But there's a couple of famous types of brandy. One of them is cognac, and cognac is from the Cognac region in France. And their rules are only wine, twice distilled in lambic stills, although there's exceptions, and a minimum of 3 years in oak. Vinars, which is the Romanian equivalent, follows almost an identical set of rules. Minimum 3 years, twice distilled. Vinars is almost of Germanic variation, so there are other Vinars. There is a Swiss fruit brandy called Vinars as well. They do try to standardize the aging practices because numbers used to be hard. They would use letters. So you have VS and VSOP and XO and XXO, VS being very special, which means 3 years in wood. VSOP is actually short for very superior old pale. Great name. For cognac, that means 4 years. Vinars, it's 5 years. Then there's an XO, which I have here, which for cognac is 10 years, but Vinars is only 7. And then the XXOs or the extra olds are 14 plus years old. The particular product I have here is called Brankovian. It's named after Constantine Brankovian, who was a prince of Wallachia in the 1600s. And he's a hero of Romania, much the way Rad Dracul was, because he resisted the Ottomans, which ultimately led to him being beheaded. Seems to be a common theme. The actual distillery here is the Alexandrian Sabre 1789 distillery, which is in De la Maru, which is in Polishit, which is north of Bucharest, about 50 kilometers. Again, right in wine growing region. The Alexandrian Sabre group has wineries. They also make a variety of distilled products. They've merged a few different companies together over the years. The original facility that's from 1789 is actually from up in Bukovina, which is in the far northeast of Romania, north of Iași, where I was. And they make some liquors and some brandy. And then the Alexander Distillery, which is right in used to be right in Iași, and part of the Soviet era, primarily brandy. This current distillery is further south now. It's just outside of Bucharest, so 50 kilometers out of Bucharest. So they have stainless steel pot stills that were adapted from grappa production, although they're currently in the process of modifying 2 of them to add copper to them because they want to start making whiskey. And you need copper when you're going to distill whiskey because you need to take the sulfurs out of the barley. And they're using Romanian barley. They say basically half the price there. This particular type of brandy, the Vinars, only went into production in 2006. So relatively recent product. They don't have a lot of really old stuff. It is not easy to find in America.
Does it come in a book like this? Is that the box? The book?
So that was actually the gift box that I got, and it had.
You get a copy of the Lord of the Rings with it.
Well, it had 2 glasses in with it as well.
Oh, that's cool. I like it.
That was a nice little gift package.
That's a nice gift box. Yeah.
So, I mean, what we're talking essentially is a 7-year-old's cognac for about the equivalent of $50 US, which would be about a third of the price of a French XO cognac.
Is it as good is the question?
Easily.
Really? Good.
Beautifully made. It's the same practices. Things cost less there if you can get them. And for the most part, you haven't seen these products in the West because they were going east. The Russians were buying them all, but they haven't been lately. And so there's a bit more availability here and there.
Nice. This is beautiful.
It's a lovely bottle, isn't it? And I mean, I'm going to put this in my decanter because that's what I do when I show off a bottle like this. It's like it's going to go into the decanter and I'll drink it over the next month.
I'm looking for something to put in my Louis XV beautiful crystal bottle.
Yeah,
just to fill it up. People won't know the difference. Just put something in there.
Yeah, you put iced tea in there. Who would know?
Well, I want to serve it.
I've done that gag I've done that gag on a talk where it's like all the software's beta, it's going to crash. So I bring out a bottle of whiskey that's actually filled with iced tea. And it's like every time this crashes, I'm going to take a big slug and just sort of gulping the bottle down as we kept blue screening over and over again until people are like, "You're going to die." It's like, no, it's iced tea. Come on.
Dvorak told me that there was something Costco had that was perfect for putting in there. Nobody would know the difference, and it was cheap.
Yeah,
but
the Costco folks often buy specific barrelings. Often, under the restriction that they can't admit where they got it from. Essentially,
yeah. See, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful Louis XIII
are quite nice.
Bottle.
Yeah,
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And
not bad cognac either.
Yeah, well, it was great cognac. Although I noticed the bottles are for sale for thousands of dollars on eBay. So the cognac is maybe not the most valuable part of it. I don't know. It's it's nice.
I try and avoid showing you folks things that you can't buy. It's just mean.
I know.
I certainly enjoy my travels, and I hope you like the story. I felt like I wanted to give Romania some love. They've been great to me. I had a lovely time there. I'll go back anytime.
Yeah.
And just an understanding of these places have been attacked by every nation near them for a long time because they are wildly productive and valuable. Right. And they still are. Post the end of the Cold War, Romania grew immediately. They grow a tremendous amount of food. They have a highly educated population. There's some phenomenal tech centers there, places like Timișoara and Cluj, just amazing. And the show we did in Iași was lovely. Nice. And along the way, they make some great products. Everything is local. Nice. There, they take that very seriously, and so and to me, I was invited to a home to have a meal, and they said, "What would you like to drink?" It's like local, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I'll drink your wine. Yeah. I prefer red. I will drink your Palinka.
Got any Budweiser?
Not so much. If I'm in Wisconsin, fine. A Miller White. Drink what's local.
The beer that made Milwaukee famous.
There you go.
Yeah, infamous. I think they screwed that one up.
So you pronounce it Brankovino? Brankovina.
Yeah.
Okay. XO. And boy, that's a good price for that. And beautiful bottle. I want the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can find that package with the glasses and so forth in the box, and very reasonable price. It's also, we made hot toddies with it last night because it was a bit
nice. Cool. Yeah.
A little hot water, a little lemon.
Yeah.
It lifted up very nicely. So
very nice.
Not a pretentious drink, just tasty.
For those who know, Branconvenue.
Yeah, turn it into like a Suntory ad, but with a vampire.
For those who know.
For those, I don't always drink wine, but when I do,
I drink Branconvenue.
There is this stop on that bloody Dracula tour that I ended up at as well, not because it was Dracula tour, but it's a castle. And it's exactly the castle you think of when you think of like Dracula's
that's
castle.
fun.
This has nothing to do with Vlad.
No.
I think of it every time I
Built
see
in
the Disney
1700s.
castle.
Yeah.
It's a tax castle, right? It's beside the river. It's the way you collect money from merchants trying to travel. But they have one room dedicated to Dracula that says, this place has nothing to do with Dracula. That's a book.
Wise.
Well, thank you, Mr. Richard Campbell, for your erudite explanation of all things alcoholic.
That thing.
My pleasure. Is the only thing better than drinking this stuff is knowing the story of how it was made.
Yeah, I love it. I love the little history lesson on there.
Mm-hmm.
You are the Rick Steves of booze.
Romania is a cultural bouillabaisse.
You'll find Richard when he's not in Madeira Park at runasradio.com. That's where Run As Radio, his podcast, and .NET Rock, his other podcasts, .NET Rocks, are. runasradio.com. And, of course, he's here every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern for Windows Weekly. That's Paul Thurrott on the left there. He is, of course, at thurrott.com. That's his blog. Be a premium member and get more. I like how you did that with the Apple MacBook review. You had the, kind of the initial review open to the public. But then for the deets, like, some things I wanted and I needed and so forth, that was good. Are you keeping the MacBook? Did you buy it or are you sending it back to Apple?
No, I bought
good.
it. Yep, I'm going to keep it.
Raycast. Just get Raycast and start delving into what it'll do. Raycast. It is, Apple has Spotlight, which is the equivalent of like hitting the Windows key, but Raycast does everything, including Windows arrangements. So you can hit Command Space and type a left half, right half, center half, and arrange the whole thing. It does so much more. It's a very powerful free tool, open source tool. It's really good. There's my little tip to, because I want you to like it as much as you like your Windows machine.
Well, it's not good.
That's
thank you.
Crazy. Paul's books, leanpub.com, The Field Guide to Windows 11, Windows Everywhere, his book all about the history of Windows through a developer's perspective, and of course, his soon-to-be Why I Love the Mac, Screw You Windows. It's going to be a great book. I can't wait.
The title is tentative.
I'm just teasing. Windows Weekly, that's where his heart is, his home is. That's where you dozers are and you winners as well. If you don't want to be here, by the way, the reason I mention when we do it on Wednesdays is because you can watch us do it live on YouTube, youtube.com/twit. But if you don't want to be here then, you can always get it online at twit.tv/WW. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to Windows Weekly. And, of course, best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast player. Get it automatically the minute it's available. Paul, Richard, we'll see you next week. You'll both be home, I think, yes?
Yep. Another week at home. Fantastic.
Right. Yes. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.